Get started without the video. This is, yeah. Just in case anyone's listening, we are just having a little technical difficulty on our video, so we're gonna see if we can get that up before I start the meeting officially.
Yes.
Just want to make sure people can hear online.
We are live, but there's no video.
It does look like we are live online, so you can hear us if anyone's calling in, but the video is not working this morning, so but we're gonna go ahead and keep going. So I will officially start the meeting. It is July 21st, 2025. Welcome to our Board of County Commissioners meeting. It is 9 o'clock for our strategic planning meeting. Let the record reflect that we have 3 commissioners present: Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner Jordan, and Commissioner Cuney. The other Commissioner French is on county business with STA, and Commissioner Waldorf, I'm not sure where she's at, but we will just soldier on here. But we do have a quorum, so that's a good thing. So we will go ahead and get going. We're going to start with budget items today. But I see I have Jeff is titling it, but I see that Sheriff Knowles and Chandler Fox. So you don't have any great introductions for us?
Budget. It's not.
So we'll go ahead and get started with Chandra and Sheriff Knowles.
So I do have a PowerPoint. I don't know.
We'll
We'll
see if that can come up.
The copies.
It's in our packet.
So are we able to share the PowerPoint?
Yeah. Sorry. We do have it on our
Okay.
computers, so
Okay, then I will go ahead and get started.
Yeah,
So,
go go ahead. Why don't you
Okay.
figure this out?
thank you. So I just wanted to, a month or so ago, I sat down with Jeff and talked through some of my concerns about this year's budget process. And Jeff suggested that I create a PowerPoint for you, so that's what I've done. And he also let me know that you all had some questions that he was unable to answer specifically to our operations and our situation. And so I wanted to really clarify that for you today. So bottom line up front, I wanted to respond to some of the call outs that were in the budget letter I received. And so specifically, all of our functions and programs are statutorily required. Within our existing budget, we've already eliminated over the last several years, we've already eliminated 90% of our travel. And our existing M&O is only $50,000, and there's really nothing there that I can cut. We have no non-essential positions. Emergency management is hugely dependent on our personnel. One of our basic tenets is everything we do in emergency management is relationship based, and you can't build relationships if you don't have people available to engage with other people. We have 2 challenges with our staffing right now. So our existing staff are in the process of unionizing. I don't have the cost forecast of that from Josh yet, but I'm anticipating it's going to be a pretty big impact to our payroll. We also have 2 grant funded positions, which we really do need to maintain those positions. That's something that I have talked to the budget office every year about. We've had a little bit of success with that. When I was hired back in 2017, we actually had 3 fully grant funded positions, and we were able to move 1 position off of the Homeland Security funding onto general fund, but we still have 2 remaining grant funded positions. And then this bullet here is extremely important. So we provide the county's program. The city of Spokane service contract or lack thereof has no bearing or impact on our required functions and programs. What it really means is it's the city's responsibility now to replicate all of the things that we as the county program, the county department maintains. So it really has no impact on our requirements. And then
That's operational. It would be very
Great.
clear. It does have a significant impact on the budget because the
Yes.
city used to financially contribute for the services that we provided. They now not only are no longer, but are refusing to pay any of the fees associated with DEM. So,
and then, so really what I want to go through today, this is a much larger conversation than just our 2026 budget. So next slide, please. So within emergency management, our statutorily required functions come from more than 12 federal laws, policies, and directives. That's just a partial list of kind of the big items there. But what we're going to talk specifically about today is our state requirements. So next slide, please. Within Washington State, we're governed by RCW 3852. And 3852 defines emergency management or comprehensive emergency management as the preparation for and the carrying out of all emergency functions to mitigate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies and disasters, and to aid victims suffering from injury or damages resulting from disasters caused by all hazards, whether natural, technological, or human caused, and to provide support for search and rescue operations for persons and property in distress. Next slide, please. So the chapter goes on to say local organizations are authorized. So each political subdivision of the state is hereby authorized and directed to establish a local organization or to be a member of a joint local organization for emergency management. Each local organization or joint local organization for emergency management shall perform emergency management functions within the territorial limits of the political subdivision within which it is organized. So again, we are the county's program, and we are responsible for ensuring that the county as an entity is ready, prepared, able, all of those things within all four of those phases to provide disaster response, recovery, mitigation, preparedness services. So within the local, interlocal agreement, even going back as far as 1979, when the first interlocal was signed for Spokane County and its municipalities, it was recognized even in that original agreement that the county was an independent contractor. When I came on board in 2017, in 2018, we modernized that agreement, I guess is the best way to say it. And instead of having an omnibus agreement that went way down in the weeds on a lot of different things, we streamlined it into what it is at its heart, which is a contract for services. And that is what it has always been, but it's just more clear now that we as the county are providing the services. And by virtue of their contracts with us, our participating municipalities they're able to be part of our programs. They're able to state truthfully that they are part of this program by virtue of the interlocal agreement. Since the city has left the interlocal agreement, they are now solely responsible for the development, sustainment of their own programs. So they basically have to replicate everything that we are doing. So the system as a whole is designed to be tiered, which is what this slide illustrates here. So at the bottom, we have our local and municipality government, and all disasters are local. And when we say that, that means that the disaster happens, local responders are first on the scene, local responders are there when outside resources come, and local responders are there when those outside resources leave. So everything happens at the local level. And what that means is the assumption is that the local municipality has the responsibility for the management of their own resources. So whatever resources and assets that municipality has, they are expected to be able to leverage them for the response and recovery of whatever the incident is. When those, and that includes, especially here in Spokane, automatic aid with our fire and law, mutual aid, any mutual aid agreements. So we have a very robust local system. But when that local system is then overtaxed, then it moves up a level, which is then us at the county. And the county is then expected to provide whatever resources we have to bring to bear against that incident. We have the options of, in addition to our own county assets, we have the ability to go directly to other counties and request assistance. So I can call any other county in the state and request resources. And of course, we have our own agreements with other partner agencies, our non-governmental, our private organizations, things like that. When our resources are tapped out, we then elevate to the state and we ask the state for resources. The state has the same type of situation that the counties has. The state can reach out to other states and request assistance, which is the EMAC, the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, or they have the ability to go to other state agencies and ask for resources. When those are tapped out, we then move up, of course, to the federal government. And then that is where FEMA would get involved and coordinate whatever responses we would be receiving from the federal government. The challenge that we have right now is the federal structure is breaking down. It's being dismantled, and so all of that responsibility is now coming back down onto the state and the counties. So next slide, please. So I'm sorry, it's small. So I just wanted to briefly illustrate comparison, our level of funding to some of our commensurate counties across the state. And really what this shows is our general fund has historically been kind of at a subsistence level. And that has led to very, it's a heavy reliance on the federal grant dollars. So if you could, next slide, please. So in addition to our general fund, we receive federal grants. And one of our primary grants is the EMPG, which is the Emergency Management Performance Grant. And that has historically been a very, very stable funding stream for us. And over the last 10 years, we have averaged $278,367 for our annual EMPG contracts. You can see on the slide there that funding provides 2 FTEs, it provides office supplies and materials, it provides public education printing, translation services, outreach materials, PSA development and airing, communications equipment, training and exercise events, and staff development. So all of that supports in the right-hand column all of the different mandated programs that we provide. And I apologize, I did mean to add a note on this slide and I forgot to. Our alert warning, our Alert Spokane program, that is paid for out of the 0.1% of 1% for public safety communications. So that is has its own funding stream. And I meant to note that up there, I forgot.
The text messages.
Yes, so that is the text messages, it's the phone calls, it's everything that is within our alert and warning program. So next slide, please. So we're at this point, we are in some really unfortunate circumstances. And I'll be honest, I have never seen anything like this in, I've been doing this almost 30 years and I've never seen anything like this before. So we have the county's reduced revenue forecast. We have our own historical over-reliance on federal grants. We have the 100% loss of our 2025 EMPG and SHSP funding. Those funds were allocated by Congress in the federal 2025 budget. The Department of Homeland Security simply decided to not disperse them. They were some of the funds that were impounded by the administration. And so that's the immediate loss of that funding out of our budget. We have extreme uncertainty with the future of our grant funding. I shared with the sheriff last week that the House Subcommittee on Appropriations for Homeland Security did include in their budget recommendations the funding for our grant programs. But unfortunately, you know, that's at the whim of Congress and whether or not they have a budget process and what that budget process looks like and all of those things. We also have the uncertainty of the future of FEMA's structure and programs. Even if even if FEMA remains, it's going to be different. And then to make matters worse, we have an inadequate funding of state level emergency management programs. Washington State Legislature has again historically declined to appropriately fund emergency management at the state level, leading state emergency management to also have reliance on federal grant funding, that they are now faced with the same cuts that we have. So next slide, yes, Chris.
Chandra, so just I'm tracking on the earlier slide, you mentioned state federal grants that are coming in of the 278 or something. And so is this what you're referring to in 25? You had budgeted for receiving 278,000 in grants from the federal government. And those grant dollars were not provided for
Correct.
this year.
Correct.
Okay, so then the employees that we have that are anticipated to be covered in that grant, we don't have funding for them.
Correct. So what is happening is we are still right now within the performance period of our 24 grant. So they're covered right now under our 24 grant contract. That contract ends. We just got an extension on it, so that will now end November 30th. But after November 30th, that money it's gone. It's gone because we did not receive the 25 contract.
And there's nothing that indicates it's going to be reinstalled.
Right.
Correct.
So essentially, we are going into 2026. We will be another $270,000 short, because if you look at the revenues plus expenses, now we have another gap.
Correct.
And the city was 192, is that correct?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
So almost 200,000 city.
So nearly $500,000.
EMPG was about 278,000. How much is the SHSP? Sorry, I missed that.
So the SHSP varies greatly. And I don't typically include that in our operating budget because since we took our one FTE off of that program, it's been instead used for equipment purchases for the special response teams and things like that. So I don't typically include that. That is project based. And so we have an application process where we submit projects, they're voted on. And some are funded and some are not,
So, and just following up, when did we kind of get word, when and how did we get word about the loss of the EMPG funding?
February?
yeah, it was whenever I would have to go back and look, but it was whenever the administration announced they were impounding all of those funds. So
February, March.
Yeah.
So are there any lawsuits nationwide around?
oh, there's a lot of lawsuits going on.
Are there any that relate to this funding?
So there are, I think primarily, at least as far as Washington State is concerned, the primary litigation is around the cooperation with ICE and the DEI language. Department of Homeland Security did already draft new terms and conditions for every single federal or every single one of their contracts. I don't know if they're across the board in federal contracts. I don't know why they wouldn't be. But there's new contract language specifically around the ICE and then DEI. Washington State is party to a lawsuit on that. I don't know what the status of that lawsuit is.
Are there any in Washington? I assume every county is dealing with this then. I just wonder if there's like a separation of powers issue around congressionally appropriated dollars or a contract breach that the executive may or may not be able to unilaterally change.
I think that's part of, I
If
think
they
that's
don't have
part
the
of
power
the,
of the purse.
yeah, I think that's part of the litigation that's happening. But again, I have no idea when that will be resolved and how it's resolved.
And then maybe just a Jeff question, if you know, federally for the next budget cycle. Is this program being talked about in the president's budget or other proposed budgets as being zeroed out or eliminated going forward?
I haven't heard specifically, but I would assume if they're not dispersing the funds this time,
Mhm.
it would be odd to put them in the next time. So I think it'd be a safe assumption to say they're not there. Currently, I have heard since the Texas floods recently, the stance towards FEMA has shifted somewhat. So that might open up some options. I've only heard that and more conceptually.
I do want to say, and to clarify, they froze these funds nationwide. It wasn't just Washington State, it was nationwide. Everybody had those funds frozen.
And then just some situational awareness for the commissioners, the grant funds that Chandra's referring to and the personnel that's covered, those are in a special revenue fund. So you wouldn't see those in the general fund, at least as it relates to 2025.
Yeah, and I think I've heard the same thing that Jeff has on FEMA, that definitely initially the president was wanting to kind of dismantle it and leave it up to the states. But yes, after the Texas flooding,
So
so.
I actually have a slide on that, so.
Okay.
So go ahead and keep going, one more. So, yeah, there we go. So, when I said this was a larger conversation than just our 2026 budget, this is kind of what I mean. So all of those laws that I showed you on one of the first slides, those laws haven't been rescinded. So the laws are still in place. They're not changing. We're simply losing the financial resources to meet those requirements. So specific to FEMA. So FEMA cannot be eliminated without Congress's approval and the rescission of the Stafford Act. However, and this is kind of what we've been watching over the course of the last several months, is the Department of Homeland Security Secretary and the FEMA administrator within their roles. They have the authority to restructure FEMA internally, or simply eliminate programs. And that's what we have been seeing happening over the last several months, is the internal changes that are happening, whether it is the reduction in force or whether it is elimination of programs. They are doing things inside of FEMA that are basically breaking it internal. So I don't have a good feeling about it. You know, I don't know. And this is for someone who, you know, my whole life is complex problem solving. And I don't have an answer for this one, and it is hugely frustrating for me. But my question to you is how do we move forward? How do we continue to meet the needs of the community, meet our statutory obligations, protect our communities, and do it in a fiscally responsible manner? And I don't have an answer for that. So I'm
And this is a conversation that Chandler and I have had a couple times in the last couple of years, and you've seen in a couple slides previously. This is not necessarily a county unit that is overstaffed, flush with people that we're spending exorbitant amounts of money on. That doesn't eliminate the reality of, like, we don't have enough money to continue doing business the way that we've been doing business countywide. We understand that. Neither of us are ignorant to that. What our concern jointly is, and I'm sure you all share it with us, is how much more can we cut and still be able to effectively respond to an emergency? I will tell you, it didn't take long for us to get overtaxed with both the Gray and Oregon Road fires. I'd like to say that those are only gonna happen once every 20 or 30 years, but I don't know. I mean, we've had quite a few fires in the last couple of weeks. And it doesn't take much for things to get out of control. And I will say, what our county Department of Emergency Management did in the days and months and years after that, showed just how important this program is, and that we have to have it staffed at least where we're at. Because it is overwhelming, the amount of work that's been done, that has to be done. And gosh, we were even looking for bodies to do work during those two emergencies. Because it was just, we had somebody who got sick and we had to pull somebody in and give them double duty to cover that for a couple of weeks. There's not a lot of fat to be trimmed out of DEM. You add in now the challenge that, going forward, the city of Spokane, under Mayor Woodward, sent us an email saying she wanted to renew the contract for 3 years. Upon getting into office, Mayor Brown by email terminated the contract. And so, the rest of us who are part of this contract, now we're paying quite a bit more money than we were otherwise. So again, that's a revenue offset that hurts us quite a bit. So financially, it's difficult, and the thing is, our responsibilities don't change to the community.
And I would add that, I'll be back with you on August 12th, to provide you with an update on the progress with our hazard mitigation plan update. Specifically, I'll be presenting our risk ranking. And, our risks are not going away. They're not small. The county is going to continue to grow in population, and as our population grows, our risks grow right along with our population. And it's, we have to be able to function in a way that allows us to do the work that we have to do, and understanding that we don't have the luxury of cutting programs, because if we cut a program over here, it negatively impacts something over here, because everything we do is interconnected. And it comes down to, we need to, especially with the uncertainty with FEMA, we need to shift some focus onto how do we prioritize the building of individual resilience within our communities. So understanding that preparedness begins at home, it begins with the individual. How do we maximize that? Because if we can maximize resilience on the individual level, that helps lessen the load when we're looking at response and recovery. But we still have all of these different programs that we're responsible for, and it ultimately comes down to what are we willing to risk? Are we willing to risk the safety of the community? Are we willing to risk the financial stability of the county because we failed to do something and we have that really bad day happen and we're not ready for it? So it's a really, really unfortunate situation all the way around.
So you have 7 staff total.
I have 7 staff positions. We have one that is currently,
Vacant.
we've had a number of folks flame out in background, and it's been unfortunate. So we're struggling a little bit to get that one filled. But yes, we have 7.
And the 2 that are federally grant funded, what is their function?
So one is actually the position that's been vacant. That's our operations coordinator position. That position is designed to basically manage the operations portion of this. So they would be the EOC manager, our emergency operations center manager. They would be working on MOUs and MOAs with community. So specifically overseeing specific parts of our operations. The other individual is one of our program specialists too. She's one of our long-term employees. She does our training and exercise program. She works with all of our public safety agencies in the county to maintain the county training program. She also manages our animal response program, and she does quite a bit of our public education outreach management as well.
The RCWs that you have in your PowerPoint list off sort of what the definitions of emergency management are, what the functions that you are to provide. But there's no, I guess, how do you determine the level of service for each of those? Because I don't, to what extent do you have to, I mean, that's always the sort of the question mark amongst everything, that we're required to do X, but to what level, and how do you determine that?
So it's programmatic. The way emergency management is kind of organized. We have what we call our 4 phases of emergency management, which is mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And within each of those phases, there are programs and activities that make up those particular focus areas. And as I said, everything that we do impacts something else that we do. So for instance, right now we're in the midst of the update of our hazard mitigation plan. And the hazard mitigation plan, for the first time, actually, we're working very closely with the planning department to ensure the alignment of the hazard mitigation plan with the county's comprehensive plan, because we're in the update cycle for the comprehensive plan. And so for the first time, there's going to be much closer alignment between those 2 documents than there has been in the past. But the mitigation plan outlines strategies for the county to use to mitigate potential incidents. And so by doing the mitigation work, we lessen our risk for other incidents. And so that's the mitigation piece. In preparedness is huge, because preparedness includes everything from public education. So going out and talking to people and explaining to them why they need a disaster plan, why they need a disaster kit for their family, through training and exercise for our county partners, for our first response agencies. All of the planning that we do, all of that is inclusive in the preparedness phase. Response is pretty self-explanatory, and recovery is pretty self-explanatory as well. So, but in terms of level, I guess that's a really good question, because we look at it in terms of what programs are we supposed to have. And so I've always looked at it through that lens of programmatic and functionality.
I guess when you talked about sort of the preparedness, and you speak to people about having a disaster kit, what does that mean? Where do you go speak to people? How do you educate people?
So we do a lot. So we have our staff will go out when they're requested. So we provide disaster preparedness presentations to neighborhoods, to businesses, to homeowners groups. In fact, Heather is going out, I think it's either this week or next week, she's speaking to an AARP event. We attend safety fairs at our fire agencies to provide information. We do PSAs in the media. We have all sorts of printed material and material that's available online. So we try to do as many avenues of access as we can to make sure we're reaching as many people as possible.
And I will say other things that you know, kind of go to the level of service that we give is, you know, we put together and DEM actually was the group that got the funding for and coordinated that active shooter exercise up at Meade High School probably, what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago? 3 years ago. Incredibly intensive, incredibly expensive for a mock exercise, but those are absolutely necessary for first responders to understand whether their systems are working together, whether we can operate together with fire like the way we should. And the actual emergency is never the first time we should be testing that. And so do we have to put together a mock exercise like that expense and that kind of drain on manpower? No, we don't have to. But at the end of the day, and I don't want to sound dramatic, but it could mean the difference between a firefighter, a police officer, or a student, or a citizen losing their lives, or numbers of them losing their lives that they might not otherwise have to. So no, we don't have to spend the money on doing those things. We think as public safety professionals, us being prepared and professionally ready for that mitigates the risk to community members' lives. So that's just an example, and it may sound dramatic, but it's real. I mean, that's why we do it to the level we do it at.
But I mean, you said that was 3 years ago. Is once every 3 years adequate?
Probably not.
I mean, so, I mean,
We don't have the money.
are
I
you
mean,
below, I mean, so, I mean, but there, I mean, there's the level of service there. I mean, is that something that should be, I mean, I assume we don't have the next one scheduled yet. So,
Well,
I mean, are we looking at?
Yes, we do.
yeah.
So is it this year? Is it, I mean,
So no, we're looking at first quarter of next year.
okay, so this is possibly a once every 4 year function. I mean, does that meet our level of service desire? Is it something
So
that should be
So
once every
so-
year? I mean,
we're talking about this example, we're talking about a full scale. So there's varying levels of training and exercise. So within the years that we don't do a full scale, we are doing tabletops, or we are doing workshops, or we are doing other types of training which support the functionality, but is not necessarily the full scale, y'all come, we're doing this. So we work all the time on different types and modes and methods of training and exercise.
And there are some places that don't invest in that kind of preparedness where they just might do a tabletop and call it good. And tabletops have their place again as a support to learning and everything like that, but the full scale is where you get the real idea of whether we can actually work together, or whether our tactics are sound, or whether our technology is sound in real world. And it gets people in a real world environment. It tests their stress levels. It does all sorts of good things. You know, sure, in a perfect world, we do it every year, but none of us have the financial or personnel resources to do that. We just can't.
Any other question? I know, it's,
I know, I can.
I'm hoping that we can do some kind of advocacy federally on the federal funds. I mean, that's 2 positions. That's a huge deal in a 7-person operation. And I assume that if we lose those positions permanently, we will be less able to respond to future disasters. Is that fair?
It not just would we be less able to respond, we would be less able to do our day-to-day work, because one of the other, I mean, we maintain a 24/7 duty officer rotation. That means, you know, I'm on call all the time. But in addition to me, we have a duty officer, and it's the duty officer who is typically the first call, whether it is a deputy out in the field who is looking for a missing vulnerable, or whether we have a fire kickoff. The duty officer is generally that first point of contact for any of our response agencies that need assistance. And it's hugely stressful. and impactful to the staff to have that on, they're on call for a full week. And the fewer staff members we have, the more often they're on that rotation. And it's stressful, it's tiring, and it's not ideal in any way. And I would say that, you know, we're not alone, we're not unique in this. There's probably thousands of jurisdictions across the country who are in the same exact position as we are. That the loss of those federal funds is going to create massive negative impact on their program, so we're certainly not alone. It's,
Well, hopefully the federal government's hearing from every impacted county, and I would think we should be doing our part to make sure that message is delivered. In my,
And it doesn't mean that with these changes that it's not made whole somewhere. Just we haven't heard it yet. You know, some of those funds that were frozen came back almost immediately. These have not. It is a good sign that the congressional committee loaded that money back in, but again, until Congress says so,
yeah,
you know, we're left wondering.
well, and if it's being impounded by the executive branch, even if it's allocated by Congress, that's a legal question in my mind. So I would like to know if there are any lawsuits
and there
about
are,
that issue.
I can't speak to them specifically, but I know there are. So. This went way longer than my usual 5 minutes.
Yeah, and we're getting it from multiple places. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, the couple $100,000 in funding and grant funding hurts. Losing a partner that's removing almost 1.5 FTEs worth of funding. It also hurts.
Yeah, well, and losing that partner, I mean, we're still having to help coordinate and do all the stuff, and it just, it's, I mean, that's frustrating.
Yes,
It is.
Well, thank you. Obviously, we're not making decisions today.
All that we're asking.
I'm sure you'll be at the department head meeting later today. So. As we talk about this, because it's like, it's, you know, I kind of say it's almost this perfect storm that is hitting, right? Budgets, you know, federally, statewide, locally. It's not easy on anyone at this point in time, so. But we need to know what we're doing with the decisions, and I do think, you know, and maybe part of the discussion this afternoon, it's, we have to figure out, as you know, Commissioner Kurz was talking, what is the level of service that we can do that meets the requirements versus what we have done and would like to do. And I know citizens are expecting, you know, the same level of service, but funds at this point in time to provide the same level of service that we have. And in the past, I mean, we're seeing it at every organization we're part of, you know, the health district, you know, as I'm not about STA, I'm not on that, but you know, just we're seeing it everywhere. It's not, you know, there's the concern of the federal funding, the grants, you know, as well as we're concerned with federal grants to Spokane County and other areas. So state's not necessarily picking up that funding deficit. So which is what
Not that we've seen.
yeah, which is what I think the feds are trying to make happen, but it's no different than what we see coming from the state, where the state is still requiring us to do RCW work, but not providing the funding. You know, they're taking the funding away, so we can have to make tough decisions as commissioners as, right, what can we do and what can't we do?
And with FEMA, even if we see the reinstatement of the funding, or if they reorganize FEMA and they move to the suggested block grant format that's been suggested, you know, the runway to that is still, it's very long. So.
And each state is different in how they run their emergency management. I mean, so Washington State handles it differently than other states. But, you know, so it's, I think that's the hard part is our state, you know, as you probably know, has underfunded it, you know, in a lot of ways versus what I've seen in other states. So it's, I say it's kind of this perfect storm that's hitting.
Can we get an update from John Colton on this particular issue? And he may know what the national dynamics are, maybe there's. Good news around the corner, certainly hope so, but if you may have ideas for us on any advocacy. Well,
I see Jeff McMorris writing that down. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, because I do know we've got lots of other stuff to talk about, so. Thank you. John, I know you're staying. You're moving.
I'll move.
So, meeting in your office. See you over there. Ready?
Good morning. Good morning. So a few months back, we sort of had some conversations about budget and the impacts of overtime and some capital expenses that we needed to kind of find room in our budget for. So I told the board that I would come back in the summertime to give kind of an update on where our budget is for 2025. And so Chris pulled all the numbers and created a small presentation. So just wanted to give you an update and see where we're at. Chris?
Good morning, everyone. If we start, it's always nice to have a staffing overview, snapshot last week. This time last year, I was looking at 2024 budgets and we had 55 commission openings. So the training center and the background investigators have done a tremendous job hiring for those open positions this year. So looking at that slide, we have currently 8. That's showing 7, but one of the BHU positions on the Valley side, we were just told they're probably going to retain. So.
And I always point out when we're talking about staffing that number fluctuates a lot. I think as of next week, it's going to be down to.
Well, we have final job offers out for every single opening that we have. So some people can't leave their current agency until like October, but we're commissioning 2 people, is it tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah.
And then a couple more in August.
So that'll be 5 tomorrow, and then in a couple of weeks it'll be down even further. We'll have some retirements and we'll go back again.
there's a question on staffing, so are there no. Authorized but not funded positions?
No, we
don't. I think we pretty much eliminated all of those.
there were 10 positions that we eliminated that were unfunded, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we have those position numbers available for pre-hiring, but there's no money ever funded into them or anything like that, and they don't show up on this list.
The reason those exist is it allows us to give a position number to civil service, so they'll give us a name to do backgrounds. There again, it's not anybody that we're ever employing or anything like that, but it allows us to get civil service names faster.
So 257 is the number that's budgeted for
Yes.
this year.
On the commission side.
And it was 258, but we lost the MHP funding from the state, so that dropped that one. We came in here and talked about that, one unincorporated, and then we pulled a body from patrol essentially, and we're funding that position through our current budget for the unincorporated, and then the Valley is funding their 2 positions, so. Or it would be down to 256, because they technically lost a position as well.
All right, next slide. This one just shows, sorry,
Yeah.
I tried to make it as large as possible.
Binoculars.
This one just shows the breakout on the commissioned side on unincorporated, 43%, 39 Valley, share 19. Sorry, 16, and then the remaining in Graham. And then on the other side is the non-commissioned 65. That's all that was showing here. Next slide kind of tells us the narrative of one of the drivers for our overtime this year. In one state or another with the individuals on the PFML, there's 10, but 18 total. Only one of those is non-commissioned. So 17 is majority are on patrol. And that's driving our overtime.
But as well as we currently have almost 30-something people in some version of training, so they're not occupying a car by themselves. So if you take a look at our total of 257 and remove upwards of 50 of those bodies that aren't out, answering calls for service and doing that work, you can see why our overtime currently is still a little elevated. And we expect that to drop off starting in, September, October, November-ish.
Just a question on that is, are either of those numbers, the 18 on leave or the 30-something in training, are they anomalies this year? Do you kind of track it trend wise year to year? Is there more on leave now? Is it kind of a normal operation?
As far as training goes, it's higher now because we've been successful at hiring people. Last year we didn't have as many people in training because we had 50 openings.
That makes sense.
Right, and so when you have such a rush in training, you're gonna have that, or hiring, you're gonna have that. As far as the absence, I think it's, we don't track it, but I think it's, anecdotally, I think it's pretty consistent.
Well, I will say something we've noticed is, remember 10 years ago when we were dealing with this staffing shortage, we were coming up with a bunch of retirements. Our average age was 42 or 43. Well, our average age right now is in the young 30s. Well, they're starting families, they're having kids. And now they get 3 months off. And they're taking it. So I think that's going to continue for a while because we have a young agency, a young organization. And so I think we can expect some of this. Many of them have military service and they're staying with their guard units, their reserve units, and things like that. So
I don't see that changing, just the nature, because you've got people retiring and you got young people coming in, which then balances on the payroll side, that it's the higher people, lower wage, or lower, slots coming in that are less money, so.
Yep.
It is what it is, and that's what our state.
And frankly, when we get a lot of people out of training, we're going to be able to absorb some of these absences a little easier without necessarily incurring overtime. So. But that's probably a year from now.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of the importance of having those position numbers available to start the civil service process. Which is unique and different to any other department we have. So.
It's good and frustrating all at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's extremely important to be able to preload people into those positions because the process takes so long. And then you put on top of that the training process after you actually hire them, that's extended as well. So the more we can get out in front of it, the better it is.
All right. Scott, thank you for the recommendation on a couple of these extra slides here. This one just basically explains where the revenue component comes from when we load it into our budget. The first line is directly dependent on the lead cap, and the lead cap is loaded once the budget is approved by the board at the end of the year. Those numbers will be loaded, then that number is given to the sheriff's office and we will bill that out on a monthly basis.
Just explain what the lead cap is for everyone listening.
The law enforcement cost allocation plan. Thank you, District. So
Partly from the valley.
So essentially what we do at the sheriff's office is we will look at the budget component and we'll load that into a plan that based on the metrics, whether it's calls for service, whether it's population for jurisdiction, there's a myriad of ways to distribute the cost to the individual jurisdictions. The budget office does a really good job of putting that all together. And then out comes a bill based on anticipated if it's budget, or if it's settle and adjust, it's based on actual at the end of the year once it's been reconciled.
Which is for the city of Spokane Valley and the other small cities that we have contracts with.
Right.
Just to make sure people understand where those funds are going.
Thank you. So everything under that first line there, the sheriff's office staff will load anticipated revenue into the budget. And So the department loads everything below that, then top line comes from building cap. Next slide.
Can I pause you real quick?
Sure.
On this slide, so. Do you have any sense that this is the budgeted amounts for 25
This is what's sitting in the 2025 budget.
budget? So do you have any sense at this point of actual anticipated revenues being on track or not at this point? Because of how the lead count works?
So,
Is that something that happens, the settling and adjusting at certain time periods?
But yeah, and sometimes that can take years too, so. I mean, I don't know how far back someone goes.
Almost got 23 months.
Yeah, so we don't know actuals until maybe 2027 for 35, so.
Right. And essentially, this revenue stream is what we've been told to bill out monthly. And that's what loads the revenue. It's that projection. We are in the process of trying to work with the city of Spokane Valley, which is obviously our biggest contract, and really the driver for this lead cap. A far more simple system that everybody can agree on. They get the transparency that they want. And none of us have to expend hundreds of hours of time trying to prove that we're not ripping each other off. To be honest with you.
Not exactly. So on just one of these operational transfers in RTCC funding, is that, what is that? Is that anticipated
So-
revenue from?
Our fund, those are ARPA funds.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Where, is there any real-time crime center? Or I'm sorry, the training center. Is there any anticipated revenues from the training center being incorporated into here? Sorry, I was, it's Monday.
Yeah, so it's right, it's on there, it's the 143, it's for
So is how are we doing on that actual wise versus the budget?
I think I know that Tony's billing everything that they can. I know that they're staying pretty full out there. In terms of the classrooms.
And I know there was probably there's some revenue that we have pulled in that wasn't necessarily anticipated for 2025. We did get a contract for the state for some of the EVOC training that we can now provide that we didn't have we hadn't planned for. So that has happened, and I know we have hosted a couple of corrections academies that we hadn't necessarily anticipated the revenue for coming in. None of those are huge dollar items. They're not hundreds of thousands of dollars each, but they might be collectively worth $100,000 more than what we had budgeted for. So
Is
I
it
think we
safe?
might be on track then?
Is it safe to say that, partly this is the revenue and then you've got offsetting expenditures
yes.
to counter it? We're not trying to make money off other government agencies. We're just trying to make sure we cover
Right, at all.
costs.
Yeah, they're getting it for a very reasonable expense. And again, some of it's offsetting some things that you guys have already expended money on. Some of that is, equipment for the range and everything like that. That is a revenue source that is offset by expenditures on our side.
And I guess maybe I'll point out, just to clarify part of your question, a lot of this $34 million, not all of it is that we have to go back and recapture after years. I mean, a lot of this is actual dollars, like from the smaller jurisdictions like Medical Lake and Deer Park. There is no settlement adjust for them. They pay essentially upfront. So those are actuals that are realized.
By contract.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, next slide. If we took the adopted budget and applied it to 2023 percentages that were distributed through the law enforcement cost allocation plan, this would be a resemblance of how the funding would come in by jurisdiction. The top portion, the top box there, those reflect the jurisdictions that we bill on a monthly basis. And then the lower box represents the other jurisdictions like Spokane that maybe we receive funding through joint use. Fairchild, that's billed separately. So they're not billed monthly, but there's other mechanisms of recovering costs through the lead cap. And then I just put unincorporated county in there just for a balancing item. To get down to the adopted. That gives a pretty good idea then of how the dollars come back to the county.
So question, so like I'm even just looking through this, so like some of our contracts like Liberty Lake, who has their own police department. What does that represent? Do you-
And there are certain things that occur out there that we go out and provide services by MOU or ILA. There are times where they have incidents that they don't have a SWAT team, so they'll call ours. There are certain levels of investigation that we go out and do that we recover those costs for.
Thank you.
Is so the previous slide showed the lead cap about 34.7 million. Is the next slide here that we're on, is this showing the detail of that 34 million, like that top box?
Those aren't gonna tie because this first one is reflects basically what's loaded in the budget currently. This next slide that you're asking about is using 2023 numbers, applying them to this 63,558, so they might be off a bit.
Okay, but generally
Yes,
the numbers, because of the methodology may not be the same, but is it representative under that lead cap? These are kind of the billing
Yes,
agencies.
yes.
the lead cap.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason you use in 2023 number, because that's the last one year that was fully settled, correct?
correct. What, yes, not gonna get into the weeds with that. Okay,
So
next
So,
slide.
so,
Oh, sorry.
so if, as I look at the percentages, so just for unincorporated county, it's the 22, almost 22.3 million, the 35.1%. So can you explain, so what does that 35% represent? That's how much of your
Total
overall,
budget,
that's how much
unincorporated costs.
is the 35? Okay.
So of a I can't read it from here, $63 million budget, the county is actually on the hook for 30-something% of it.
Okay, and the rest of it is dispersed
Offset
amongst
the
those
revenue. Yep.
other jurisdictions. Okay. And then the county responsibility / other recovery, what would fall into that?
That would be like the civil desk,
Okay,
other recovery would be potentially some other contracts that we would have out there that gets dropped into that revenue source.
SRDs and stuff like that.
That's
Yeah.
SRD,
SRDs.
the SRD contracts, other
Okay.
contracts we have that we actually provide some. It's not.
Generate revenue.
It's a revenue generator, but it's not 100% cost recovery because they only pay a portion of the.
so is the county responsibility then so is it actually then 42.2? Do you have to add those numbers to get, or just a portion of the 7.1?
Well, but those are,
A portion.
that's revenue coming in, so.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
right.
so he's showing the unincorporated county as revenue just to balance it out.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things, commissioners, Commissioner Kearns and Commissioner Jordan and a number of us with the Sheriff's Department met a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things I think they wrestle with, and you all probably wrestle with, is you've got a budget of $63 million in the Sheriff's Department, but it's not representative of just kind of the sheriff's unincorporated. Truly, if that's what they were doing, and that's all they were doing, it's not representative of that. So the attempts, as we talked about, is how do we get to a point where we can split it out to give it more meaningful
Clarity.
conversations and clarity, because the county's not spending $63 million on the sheriff's department. They are, but they're not. So it's kind of a step into being able to separate those out so you can see clearly what all the jurisdictions are that the sheriff's department is providing services for on their behalf. School resource officers, all those sort of buckets. So you can kind of see by functional part of what the sheriff's department is providing, and you can get down to some clarity around, here's really the unincorporated piece of the general fund is providing support for it. Is that fair?
Yep.
Next slide is the meat and potatoes, why you want us here.
The numbers keep getting smaller. Like basically the font.
Yeah.
Sorry. The actual numbers are getting bigger.
I was hopeful.
I just saying I can't read it.
Yeah, I'm gonna read my copy. The first line there, you're gonna see that salary is 500,000 overspent. The very next slide recognizes that that entire amount is essentially the overtime, which we talked about earlier. In the supplies and one other thing, I pulled out extra duty from the salary component, so numbers aren't gonna perfectly be matching there. If you annualize the total expenditure on salaries, because I took 100,000 out because extra duty is completely self-supportive. So right now we're 100,000 over budget because we need to do a BCR. And once we do that, then basically numbers fall in line. So I just made a correction on that. The supplies, I backed out one-time items that are large purchases, whether that's ammo or tires, MDCs, that kind of stuff. So those weren't annualized. So we can't just take total expenditures and multiply it by 2 for the rest of the year. That goes to the same with contracts, Axon contract, not gonna double the $1.1 million annual. We paid it, we're not paying it again next 6 months. So in looking at that, we are currently 1.1 under budget.
Forecasted for the end of the
Forecast
For the end of the year.
Yes, thank you.
You know, we had some one-time dollars where I came in like for vehicle purchases and some computers and stuff, and I guess what he's saying is if you can't annualize that because we've already paid them, those are one-time costs, they're done. And so we're not gonna have those expenses with the last half of the year, hopefully.
I'm sorry.
Just a clarification, so the rolling budget is at the bottom, it says 69.8 million. And then on the last slide, it's showing a total of 63.5. I'm just trying to figure out what is the total budget and what is different, what does rolling budget mean?
So rolling budget is the adopted plus the BCRs and the additional budget that was added in after you adopted the budget.
What's the BC?
Budget change requests. So to give you an example, we had requested, and this kind of jumping ahead on the last page, but we had to have, based on the new hires, 10 vehicles. And so that wasn't in the adopted, that would have been in the rolling budget because we had requested that later on in here. And so if you were to look at the financial side.
On that you were handling up in your budget.
Yeah,
Right.
you didn't ask for
So it wasn't-
permission to do that.
We didn't add to our budget.
Correct.
We paid for those out of our existing budget.
Yeah, so that shouldn't change the overall budget number, though.
It's gonna move
For an accounting thing, yes, but actually no, right? If I'm
it's moving stuff around here. So if you look at the capital outlay of 5 million, you didn't approve anything outside of the helicopter. That's why I included that last page on there that shows you what made up that 5.1.
I guess in simple terms, we did not increase our budget to pay for those items. So we have not increased our budget. Because you guys haven't approved an increase in budget or anything like that. So our budget is what it was adopted at the beginning of the year. As far as the total dollar amount.
Okay, checking, because I don't think we've done any budget adjustments this year.
Because the VCRs are within our own budget. We still have to do, when we, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but when we purchase something that's not in a specific bucket, we still have to do a change request to move the money over to pay.
from one line to
From one line
another
to another,
within our budget.
budget.
doesn't increase the overall, it just moves them between lines.
Which is fine, and which it should be what's happening is that once we give you a budget as an elected official, that is your budget to deal with.
But we still have to
And
do
so-
the change requests.
So a lot of, and one thing I will say, and in this meeting that we had several weeks ago with the budget office and Scott, they pointed out that, you know, we were telling you then, we thought we were gonna be 1 million, maybe a little bit more underwater. But they were also reminded us that we hadn't added in revenue from the valley that we were technically covering in our budget for 10 positions. So we then did that. I believe you all have added that into our budget. And that's how we get to being in the positive again. Is because we had $1.5 million of revenue hanging out there that had not been loaded into our budget.
So just to clarify, so the 1.18, it's a projection under,
Yes,
is that based on the budgeted total expense authorized? Does that make sense? So that's based on the budgeted number, not the additional 69 total.
This is what Workday currently is showing. It's gonna be, that's gonna be projected.
Can I ask through what date? I don't know if I missed that.
End of June.
Yeah.
Okay, this is through June. Got it. Okay.
So the next slide just shows the overtime that we are over budget on. Just give capital. Yeah, capital. Oh, that's the next.
Mine's out of.
Yeah. And then we already went over the capital detail on the next slide.
But if I'm, I guess, on the overtime, if you're annualizing and expecting there to be $500,000 over, is that included in the 1 million?
Yes.
Previously?
yes.
So, and to take it a step further, I didn't acknowledge any potential savings. Like Sheriff was saying, beginning September-ish, throughout the rest of the year, I just kept it the first 6 months, next 6 months.
Yeah, and we did have some significant overtime drivers that got loaded into this. You know, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money in Chelan, assisting them. Also over in Kootenai County as well. Those were things that don't typically happen, that were large drivers of overtime that we would hope do not come to bear second half of the year as well, but they are what they are.
Commissioner Waldorf, you joined us. I apologize. I didn't notice that. So go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, yeah, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I joined a while back, but I was just listening in, getting ready to head out with my daughter for her national high jump competition. So I've just been listening. I was in on the emergency management and I've been listening to this presentation. So I was just getting clarity on, it seems like a lot of the savings for the sheriff's department are under the benefits. That's where you're projecting more savings to kind of balance your budget. Is that for any particular reason?
Well, let the budget office answer that. They've developed the budget for benefit.
We did not specifically analyze the underspend on the sheriff's benefits at this point in time. But we're happy to take a look and review and provide some additional information if we can.
Anytime.
But what you're doing with this end of year forecast is you're saying by the end of the year, if benefits are used at whatever pace, right? You're anticipating $1.5 million of savings there. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
They can move that within Workday to anything that's gonna be over, so they can move half the benefits to salary and wages. And then there'd be a little more.
Commissioner, are you asking why that was so over budget?
Well, I was just curious. I mean, I hope that the good news is everybody's healthy and not having to use their benefits as much.
I don't think you guys are using that kind of metric to develop the budget Yeah, I don't.
I think when they're loading the budget, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think they load a pretty high benefits package. And if the new hires aren't going to be taking advantage of a lot of that, then there's gonna be savings to the county for that. Is that accurate?
We approach the budget with a blended rate for vacant positions, to accommodate for anyone that may have children if they come on board or not, just so we kind of have a little more cushion to our budget assumptions as opposed to a single employee only on our medical plans.
Married, single, married with children. And so it's a blend. There's no way to predict what medical plan everyone is on, and even then between group health and Prem Parent, not group health, but Kaiser Prem Parent. So they're just budget assumptions that are built in to help kind of give us an overall guideposts of what it might be.
Yeah, I was thinking if there's underspend in the sheriff's budget, it'd be interesting to look at other larger budgets to see if we're also projecting less spend in the benefits for the year. So
Some of it's also when the board approved less budget that the sheriff had requested at the end of last year. The entire difference was just removed from the salary line, 'cause that's the biggest line.
Yeah.
Which gives them more cushion, so throughout the year, they can move it around where they actually need it. So when there was that delta difference, the budget office didn't go through and take a little from here, a little from there. They put it all in the biggest line, leaving it to their budget team to move it as needed. So I think that's probably the biggest driving factor here.
And just to make sure I'm tracking the 3 million in actual overtime expenses so far on the previous slide would be under salaries and wages. And that's kind of the category it would fall under.
Does overtime get loaded into salary and wages, or is that a separate line? item?
Yes, that's salary, that's included in salary.
Thank you.
That's what's driving that 516 overages. The next slide.
Okay, thanks.
Slide.
Yeah, I think I
That it?
already went over that again. But you don't have one that says questions? I don't have one that says others. What do you do?
So you were able to incorporate all of this within your capital detail, I guess, just to follow up on this, was within your budget,
Yes.
other than the
It-
helicopter, which we had allocated last year, those funds in the previous year for the expense of this year.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
So, and remember, the Valley vehicles offset, they pay for those, but the unincorporated patrol vehicles, the shoot house, the Connex containers, the CIP rollover are
Yeah.
things that we're working out inside our budget.
Okay.
So again, it was tremendously helpful to get that extra 1.5 million from the Valley actually loaded in, because we had the liability, but we hadn't loaded in the actual revenue from that, so that helped. And then obviously we'll make sure we get that done promptly, depending on how their sales tax measure goes here in a couple of weeks and their desire to add 10 more bodies at that point.
And that was my oversight, when those positions were requested last year, it was, I guess I was just under the assumption it gets loaded in, but obviously it's not the case, and so we were carrying those liabilities in our budget, and so when it was pointed out to me, we fixed it.
thank you. Sorry, any other questions? We're way over on time, so I'm gonna start to.
I just had, I guess two quick questions. So just to go back to so the percentage of your overall budget that is the responsibility essentially of like the county general fund. Is that the 35.1?
It's 35 plus a portion of that 7.
Okay, so is that what gets it up to, because when you guys had come and presented last year on the budget, you gave a percentage of 38.9. So is
Yeah,
that still,
sounds about right.
that's about accurate then?
Yeah.
The 39, okay. Just right around 39%. And then, so just so we're totally clear as we move forward. So right now, you're good. Where do you project you're gonna be at the end of the year?
The 1.1.
Okay,
Under.
all right, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good projection.
Yeah.
Today.
Better than a couple months ago.
Crystal ball.
Okay, thank you. Kyla, it's gonna take us to you.
I didn't move that. I like your thing.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Looking out for my best interest.
Got a team with you.
Yeah. Brought the A team for you this morning, morning commissioners. With me today, we've got Brandy Collier, that's our core, of course, and Barry Green. These are some of the critical folks that drive our capital plans moving forward. So we wanted to just give you all an opportunity to see kind of the major corridor projects. This really goes beyond what we present in our 6-year plan. I mean, this is probably more like 10+ years of work down the road here. But to help give you eyes on how we, are strategically looking for funding, breaking up projects, and kind of just wrap our heads around the costs associated with when we talk about the corridors. I mean, the big ones. You can see on this map here, they're fairly well represented around the county, around the periphery of the urban area, typically, where we have the highest volumes of traffic, and the roads that are is obviously not all encompassing. But these are some of the major ones that we have in the 6-year plan that we continue to tackle as we move through the years and the grant cycles, and just making sure you all have eyes on these as we, think about prioritization and what realistically we can bite off in any given number of years. So if you go to the next slide here, just high level, when we add in grant funding, we put about 56 million into the roads every year. Over half of that, 32, is on the capital side, because this team does such a great job of leveraging our match for grants. So about 6 million is what actually comes out of the road fund. And then we leverage that into about 32. I know there's going to be too many words on these slides, so I'm trying to pick some highlights here and things. We're only able to put about $5 million into preservation annually. That's our crack seal, chip seal overlays. Definitely our best dollar spent, because it is really efficient. We pay a lot less than we do going out capital, and it's a lot faster. But you can't leverage preservation very often in grant dollars. There's very limited opportunities there. And then we're just shy of about 20 million on just maintenance, everything from snow to potholes, guardrails, just the day-to-day taking care of the roads. Go to the next slide. Here's just a high level 3-year average of where the capital funds come from. What is the county share versus what we're getting in state and federal, sometimes local and other sources in there. So that average is that right about $6 million in county funds. We typically get about, or on average, about 15 in federal, 7.5 in state, and then another couple in other sources of funds. Next slide. So you can certainly review this anytime you'd like. We just wanted to give you a highlight of all of the grants, and this is not an exhaustive list. This is just the grants we are watching on a day-to-day basis. Some of them are annual calls, some of them are biannual calls. some of them have very great, and by great, I mean low match requirements, the safety projects in particular, and the NHS projects. And occasionally we don't apply for the 0% match, just so you know, to get points. Sometimes we will throw some in there because it will better our application. You go to the next slide. You get into some of these that are, you know, some of the bigger ones like build and the railroad crossing elimination. Those are usually higher dollar ones. But there's a lot of these. In fact, if you go, I guess we only included 3 slides with these, but if you ever wanted any additional information on these, we have them, but wanted to make you all aware that, you know, we're regularly applying for these for the projects in our 6-year plan, as we can figure out which projects fit the scoring criteria best for each funding source. And unfortunately, they don't just ask us what would be the best. We have to kind of fine tune asks to meet that particular set of criteria for each application. We go to the next one. Just one of the things I like to highlight on this one, you know, that CRAB program is really one of the things where we can get into those rural arterials. And very happy to see at the bottom of that list, we're back eligible for Department of Ecology grant for the first time in many, many moons. So we're actually having to kind of relearn those programs a little bit because it's been a minute since we've been able to apply for them.
And just to chime in on the ecology grants, the big advantage with those is we can make them part of a larger project and they can become our match for a large road project and save us county dollars. So that it's a really good deal. They're part of every project, so it makes a nice match for our other projects and saves us a lot of county dollars. So it's great to be back in the fold to be able to apply for those grants again.
So if you think about a large road project that we have a 20% match on, but then we can only pay 25% of an ecology grant as that match. Now we're in it for, you know, 5% instead of 20%. It all goes well.
Do you know about how much that might be a year that we're now eligible for on an estimated basis? Just out of curiosity, I'm not trying to hold you to anything.
You know, when we were applying previously years ago, they're usually in the $1 to $2 million range. These grants are water quality grants. They only pay for the treatment aspect of stormwater. A lot of our needs are more related to dams and flood mitigation, but usually they go hand in hand. You can find a nexus to get both accomplished with those grants. So that's a typical range. $1 million or $2 million is where they generally want to do their projects.
Is that per project? So on an annual basis, would we have one project?
It just depends. You know, we've gotten a little more selective in how we look at those. Just because they'll give us a grant to provide treatment for an arterial may not mean we want to do it. There's ongoing perpetual maintenance requirements with those treatment facilities that we just have to be cognizant of because they don't go away. There's a lot of maintenance dollars that we have to spend on those proprietary and non-proprietary treatment options. So I would tell you, we're just looking at them case by case. Wall Street's one where we know we have a lot of work to do. It's the busy major arterials where you would picture a lot of pollutants coming off the roadway. That's the ones where they make the most sense. The smaller arterials, not always. I would say maybe 1 or 2 a year would be the most we would expect.
Let's go to the next slide. So this is just helping just kind of definitions, just to make sure we're all talking the same language here. We talk about capital versus maintenance renovation. Capital projects, you know, are, you know, typically designed by Brandy's team, contracted out to third-party contractors, usually major construction and improvements to our bigger assets. Maintenance and preservation is, you know, typically, if you want to think that, that's the stuff we're doing in-house. And maintenance is, you know,
just maintenance. It's sweeping, it's striping, it's snow plowing, it's things like that. Preservation is that side where we're keeping our roads in as good a condition as we can. Maintenance and preservation, typically county road fund. Capital projects, we try to never be solely county road fund. We do not like to do anything unless we can get somebody else's money into the pot. Again, those are bid out, whereas we do our work in-house. But there's just such limited opportunity for grant funds for that preservation work. We're doing a little bit right now for the small cities, but they're few and far between. Go to the next slide, Rebecca. All right, getting to our first big corridor here, Argonne, our busiest road in the county. We've got this project is broken into several pieces. We've already secured some funding. The study for the Argonne Upriver intersection, also known as the county's worst intersection, is just nearing completion. It'll be completed this summer, and we'll be briefing you on the details of that. And recently we got just shy of $4 million from PIMCIB to start working on engineering and right of way for our first big piece of the puzzle on the left there. And then when you look at what we expect Argonne needs, and this is in present day dollars. Accurate that? Yes. Okay, present day dollars is about a $21.5 million need. And then depending on what happens with the Centennial Trail Argonne Gap, that could be another 15 million, depending on how that comes out. There's a lot that needs to be done to make that area safe. That is another huge component I didn't mention earlier in those funding programs is safety. And when we have accidents or God forbid fatalities on corridors, it's a horrible tragedy. It does make the project score better. It's just the way the system is set up. They're trying to eliminate those. And so this is what's called part of our high injury network. That is a classification now that even certain grant funding you can't apply for if it's not part of the high injury network. Next slide, Rebecca. Maybe I'll jump in for 1 minute.
But in just a second before you go on, just because I know with Argonne, with how does this working in Millwood, because the city of Millwood has their project. They're working, so.
Yeah, and they are actively underway with that right now. You know, everything we're doing is, you know, in concert with that project. You know, they have a little different. Safety is always a big goal of that, but also it's that the backup that they're having, which is why those left-hand turn lanes are going in. They're adding a nice pedestrian facility as well with that project. It is kind of an interesting corridor because when you look at like from upriver to I-90, we have signals, Millwood has signals, the valley has signals, and the state has signals. So we all do work together to make sure, you know, we maintain the Millwood's signals, but to make sure that that is all flowing. That does take a lot of interaction, cooperation.
Yeah, because I just know they're trying to get to, you know, yes, further the impact that is happening there. The backup, and I'm, you know, because all the way to I-90, and I think it isn't the DOT wanting to expand the bridge over I-90 to 3 lanes.
I believe they just I'd have to look it up. I think they just secured some funding for the west side, the southbound. And I don't know if that's just rehab or widening. I know it's in.
Yeah.
Fine.
I know they posed it. I don't know if that funding is for that or not, for the valley did secure that.
Okay. I just know it's, you know, definitely for Josh and I's districts, you know, primarily Josh's now. It's a huge area that, yeah, everyone's been trying to work on. So I just want to make sure that we're working in kind of collectively as we're going to SRTC, just all those to really help, you know, look at it holistically.
And those partners are participating in our planning study as well. And same with SDA is looking to put a parking right there at the interchange also.
Let's be honest, I mean, the biggest backup along it's the train. it's the train at Millwood. I mean, that's what causes the biggest backups along that core.
Right.
You ever hit a train there in Millwood?
Well, yeah, but no, I drive it a lot and it's just it's the like,
No,
it's
that-
kind of like the freeway from 3:30 on, it's.
It's backed up, but I bet you at some point in there, a train came through and that's why it's even. That's why
They
it's
never
worse.
come through during rush hour.
I've.
As I sat there watching it.
There's a reason when my wife and I take the kids to their parkour and gymnastics, you have to leave at a certain time. Otherwise you get stuck by that train. So you're either early or you're late. So, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I
it's a
mean, the train's
mess.
definitely, but it's,
Oh, yeah.
the whole thing's an issue.
It is, yes. There's a lot of problems, but the train would make a big difference if it had an underpass or no pass, but
Well, that was just
huge
gonna-
dollars if we were talking that.
Oh, yeah, the train's definitely added, for sure.
Yeah.
So this is just a cost breakdown, just jump in for a minute, give Kyle a break, but you can see of the 19.6 million, 12.5 is redoing Argonne Road from Wells to Bigelow Gulch. So that's a big portion of that. It's just the need to continue to maintain that corridor. Gets a lot of truck traffic, a lot of loading. Roads coming apart to the point we're gonna have to address it and it's gonna be an expensive repair. So that's just for your awareness. It's pretty obvious here in the numbers. And then the other thing is the intersection. You know, they're gonna come back with an alternative on that intersection and we'll be bringing that back to you, but that's obviously an expensive improvement. It's a very busy intersection. We're talking about buying right of way that's gonna be expensive also, but necessary. We're very much there. It's our busiest intersection, one of our most dangerous intersections. It's beyond capacity. It's time to do something with it. So happy to be moving that project forward. Next slide.
This is that breakdown of the kind of that Centennial Trail interaction there. This is really one of the focal points of where there is, let's say, a less than ideal build out of the Centennial Trail. You've been on this area, it's not formalized. Most people are on Maringo Drive, some stay on Upriver. So there's a lot to be done here, and the study's ongoing to inform on this. A lot of this is actually formalizing the trail along Upriver Drive, and then as well as beyond Argonne, all the way down to Donkey Island. Is that what the name of that trailhead is? Even potentially considering going over or under Argonne to facilitate that. But this is really a big focus of everything Centennial Trail, because it is, we've got a couple miles here where it's just completely out of character to the rest of the trail. All right, let's go north.
Let me take this one. Sure. So Wall Street, I think we're all familiar. That's another very busy arterial for us. And you can see we have a couple of stormwater pieces that are in the mix here. One on the north end, one on the south end. There's also the redundant force main for the Marion Hay lift station that's very much needed. We had our little incident not too long ago that reminded us we very much want a redundant force main completed up there. So a piece of that is in this corridor. And also just Wall Street. It's a busy road. You know, we rebuilt it 10 or 15 years ago and it's time again. That's just the nature of these arterials, similar to Argonne. And when we do that, it is not cheap. Along with that, there's obviously safety improvements we'll be looking at and pathway projects enhancements. So kind of a comprehensive project, but when you roll that all together, you can see we're about 11.6. The road portion is the predominant portion, but the stormwater will be in there also in this. Next slide. So Market Street, staying up north, you can see there's several pieces here to Market Street. There's kind of a big reconstruction project. There's the north end that I believe Commissioner Kearns and I have visited out in the past. That we
Number one
love.
priority for the region, right?
Very nice, yes, absolutely. Every project.
Please.
Priority is. So that's on our radar. You can see we're at about 13.3 million here. There's also a sewer project that's going to help convey some of that sewer. Oddly enough, it's going north. It's a little counterintuitive, but we're connecting up some things that'll better ultimately serve Morgan Acres and some other areas in the north of Spokane County.
So just for a little bit of clarity on the sewer side of this, so we are planning to kind of time our completion of our sewer to the best of our ability with the build out of the Meadworks development. They are building the public sewer from west to east as they build out their development. And once they get to that east corner, we want to be pretty far along. We got a long ways to go, but this is that last major trunk in our sewer network. But we have to get all the way from Meadworks back south to Francis, basically, in order to serve that entire area, because everything has to flow to the north. And so we want to keep these chunks going. Some of it's in market, fortunately, some of it gets to be outside of the roadway prism as we go kind of around the Department of Energy facility up there. We've already started working with them on right away because we expect it's going to take about 5 years to get that out of the federal government. But they've actually been working with us, and Sandra's chasing that one early. But it's kind of a long play. It goes part and parcel with the road, but we really do want to get that. It's kind of the big missing hole in our sewer service area that's within the UGA boundary, because we have to get all the way from, basically Costco over to Francis.
Yeah, that all heads north to the North Point and then feeds back into Marion Hay, where we're doing the redundant force main. So it kind of makes a big loop and comes back south. Next slide. So moving on, Glen Rose. Near and dear, we have a couple of these that I know Commissioner Cooney will be interested in, and you can see it there. Obviously, it's one big project, but it'll get pulled apart into various pieces. Barry and Brandy do a great job of strategically looking at every grant opportunity and picking the best portion to apply with. And it's not always intuitive. Normally on corridors, we're building from the most populated area or the generator away. But in this case, sometimes it makes more sense to apply for something in the middle, and we do that when the opportunities come up. But you can see he had several pieces. Commissioner Cooney's very familiar with the challenges when we have half the roadway being rural and half of it being urban. It narrows down your funding opportunities and affects your scoring, but we'll continue to persevere with that. You can see it's a big lift. Glen Rose total is 35 million. But again, this is our long range plan. This is where we're going, and we will keep striving in that direction. And sooner or later, the dominoes will start falling, and the traffic will get to the point that we'll start getting pieces done. Next slide. Very similar. 32nd Avenue out in the valley. You can see on the far right there, starting over at Barker, where that realignment project was completed by a development, and ending over there more or less at Highway 27. We have this whole section that we would like to get rebuilt and urbanized. And again, same challenge. The south side of it is predominantly rural in nature. The north side is urbanizing rapidly. And in particular, coming down the hill from Saltese, that area could really use some help sooner than later. So we'll keep chasing dollars on that portion. And also there's a high level thought of realigning and coming down the hill. A developer owns the realigned portion that we're thinking of down to the intersection of Sullivan and 32nd. It would make a much more logical connection. It does come down a hill. There is a lot of rock, be a major lift when we get there. But if we don't have these visions now, they never come out. And right now it's undeveloped property. It's rural property. It would be much cheaper and easier to acquire now than later. And the underlying owner is a developer that we've worked with for decades. So potential is there, and we'll keep pursuing that.
Because how many accidents are as Saltese comes into Sullivan?
No, I haven't had any idea. We can certainly get that information. We know it's gotten more. It's getting to the point it's going to start meeting warrants for something better in it, the signalization or some kind of intersection.
Because as you and I have talked, driven it, it's a blind intersection, and there's a lot of kids that are coming out there to then go up to Central Valley High School, and I just.
Yeah, and people get impatient, as you know, and start taking gaps, making decisions, and you have accidents, especially with young drivers. So that one's definitely on our radar. and that may come along sooner or later. There are some developer contributions, but you know, it's fairly small amount, but those help. They look good on grant applications, they're match. We do have safety calls that would be up like we can.
Which intersection did you say?
Saltese, Sullivan.
Something about it.
Yeah, just what they're looking at realigning.
Yeah. And again, you know, pretty major lift, 24.8 is what we're currently estimating it as. And it's just a long section of road. The topography isn't that bad, except for the one realignment we talked about. But it's just a long road that we would like to urbanize. And the thought being you would have an active use pathway on the north side and you just have a shoulder road on the south side. And then if that ever came into the UGA, development could improve that side when it happens. So put the path where you need it.
Well, and there's just a talk, I mean, there's been talk for a long time, you know, it's trying to get cars off of I-90. You know, this is a way to, if you go from Barker, you can come down Barker to get to Highway 27 and down. You know, as an alternative to I-90, because that's what the DOT is trying to help get us all thinking as ways of alleviating, you know, on the major highways, you know, just like on 195, what are the alternatives to getting people off of 195 and not having to be so busy? So as it comes into I-90. And I think this is another route that, I mean, I remember Governor and I talking about it early on years ago, that this is another way to get some of that traffic off of I-90 that, you know, otherwise you're taking 27 all the way up Pines to I-90 to go. Yeah. So,
Yeah, if you've ever driven this, even as incomplete as it currently is in terms of having to jog up at Sullivan, it's quite a bit faster than going up to the freeway.
Yeah.
So any improvements we'll make will draw more traffic. It's not a complete like a beltway, but it does lend itself to people not having to go right through the middle by 90. And obviously, like to your point, Washington's very much in favor of those projects.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. We head out west. Craig Road being a major north-south connection. We're kind of looking at this all the way from Highway 2 to I-90. There's several pieces of this broken up. If you go to the next slide, you can just kind of see the zoom in of the north portion of it. This includes our realignment project that was just recently funded. The roundabout that is funded as well through our previous earmarks. But then you just kind of see the road broken into reasonably sized chunks for individual projects to improve as this continues to see additional traffic. We recently put in an application for Thorpe Road. The base is on a path to getting that gate open, and that's not going to work with Thorpe in the condition that it's in right now. It's barely a road as it is. So big priority for the child in the local community, pulls a lot of traffic on Highway 2. So hopefully we can pull that leg into the project, get the intersection built and the realignment done, and make all the chips fall on the table in roughly about the same timeline here. With Thorpe being the one that's probably got the biggest timing disadvantage. And trying to marry that up with the construction of your child. But got a couple of years, we'll keep swinging. Maybe we'll get lucky on this one. We'll have another swing at a different opportunity in 26 for DCCA, 27.
Or, yeah, for DCCA.
Yeah, so we'll have another opportunity next year if we're unsuccessful this year. If you go to the next slide. You can see this being the south part of the corridor here. And that's just a kind of a concept of what's looking like over there to have a functional interchange. This is what we're studying right now with some of those congressionally directed funds and how we might be able to make that work better at I-90 there. If you go to the next slide. You can see all of the pieces of secured and unsecured funding that are on the radar here. We had a couple of earmarks in 23 and 24.
as well as the SRTC grant here for the realignment project. We just got, I don't think we've gotten a letter yet. Been awarded, it's in the final list and approved by the board. And then you start looking at some of the other opportunities out there. It's a big dollar figure at the bottom. This is 60+ million in work if we go do everything. And it's possible we won't be able to do everything, but there are some very critical pieces along the way that are certainly going to help that corridor. I think what we already have funded is real high priority, really good work to be done. You see something like a build grant down there at the tune of 37 million to get the whole thing. That's a big lift. I just want to call that out because you have to obviously have a tremendous amount of match for that. And administratively, we're still finishing Geiger administratively. That's how gnarly these grants. Years after completion, the administrative burden is no joke.
So what's the match requirement for that grant?
For build, 20
million.
No, 20%. Right?
Yeah.
And it can't come from federal match. So what made Geiger such a great project was the state already having so much in the works that counted for the match requirements. And so the county's contribution was dramatically reduced. Something would have to come together with the state to make this work. They would have to be willing to invest in that interchange in order to be reasonable, because I can't see the county having 7 million for a single project in match tied up. But if there were other players, you can bring anybody's money to the table and that goes to it as long as it's not federal. So, our earmarks can't count towards that. They look good, it shows other investment in the area, but if you take a swing for something like build, and the earliest we could even be having that conversation would be, well, we want to be talking about it next year if the commissioners wanted to pursue it in 27. But we still have to finish the access revision report that has to get accepted by the Department of Transportation. So it's still in study mode for the big swing. We're just working now to get those pieces that have been funded on the ground. And then the commissioners can, make some prioritization decisions about what swings we take next. One more slide, just a different way of breaking down the costs by project instead of by funding source. You can see the big numbers at the top, that's all that interchange work. So that's really where a significant portion, almost half of the project would be in that interchange. And then everything else is what we consider bite-sized pieces, things that make sense as a reasonable project. Any of our funding partners come along, the match is reasonable, it fits within our standard kind of capital plan allocation. So that's why we tend to break it down into reasonably bite-sized pieces. And again, over the next decade, whatever that time frame is, we can start attacking that. It would be the interchange is the big swing if the commissioners decide to move forward with that, if the report allows us to. But we'll cross that bridge as we get a little further down in the study. We got one more for you. I know we're all getting tired of infrastructure. We never get tired of it, but I just wanted to give you all an example of what a project looks like. It's got its own funding program. These are monster projects, but they get funded and they're good projects. This is railroad crossing elimination because they have huge safety and traffic implications if you can pull these off. If you all are familiar, the city of Spokane Valley has their monster going right now at Pines. It's a big lift. These things take a lot of space. We had to acquire a lot of property. but they're big deals. It's a huge safety thing if we can get our major corridors, and Harvard is our highest volume corridor with an at-grade crossing. Because we don't own the Argonne one.
Yeah.
So,
For the valley, so it's like right on the edge of the county in the valley.
yeah, and so to do one of these projects, not only do you have to take a big swing with local funds, there's a lot of land acquisition, and you have to eliminate another crossing. In order to get the funding to build one of these, you've got to be willing to give another one. So it's a 2-for-1 elimination from the railroad standpoint. Fortunately for the competitiveness of this project, we have an at-grade crossing just down the street. We'd be happy to give up, or at least from a transportation opinion. Obviously, it's always the board's decision to do any of that, but we would make the recommendation that we close the McKinsey crossing. It's not very safe. It's right through a developed residential area. Because there's a crossing there, the trains have to blare their horns when they're coming through. If you eliminate the crossing, they don't have to.
Is that to the west or east? East.
It's.
Hello, just portraits.
And Mackenzie's not really a major thoroughfare. It's really local circulation. But if the board decides that this is something to pursue, at least we have all the right pieces other than the property. But there's a means to that end, and this would be the one that would score the highest and most likely.
And what's the match on this?
7 million. Now, maybe we don't have to have that all come from the county. I don't know. We can always get creative. State can always come to play on these. There could be in-kind contributions. There's ways to get to those match dollars that aren't just writing a check out of the road fund. And so we'd like to get as creative as humanly possible to always protect and preserve the road fund.
And we're very early on with this one, as you might imagine. It's probably on a 5 to 10 year horizon, but it is the next likely road crossing. It's the end of the bridging of the valley, if you will. It's the last major crossing to be built. So it's pretty well positioned. We had told me an initial conversation with the railroad about it, just put it on their radar and start the conversation. And we're going to pursue planning dollars. Obviously, that's the first step. Get the conversation started, start planning, start some of the early concepts and see where it goes. So more to come on that. We'll obviously be checking back as we go and letting the board know where we're at. Make sure the board has it as a priority also.
Yeah, and in that conversation, I'll just share that BNSF did share that between the loads and the traffic on this route, this project should score up there with West Side projects. It's one of the top. Yeah, in terms of just numbers.
I could see it being a really good thing for that area.
Any questions from the board? Sorry, we went through so much information, but I certainly have it in. You need to reference back to it. You can always ask us how things are going, but just wanted to give you all that kind of high level, this is long range. These are the major corridors and what the dollars look like. Obviously, if you add all those up, we're in 9-figure territory here. So, and if you just assume a 20% match on 9 figures, it's going to take a heck of a long time to amass the match for that. But it's got to have that kind of long runway on these projects and understand where that might be going.
Can you just remind me the TIP, Transportation Improvement Plan, it's a 6-year plan? Is it updated or tweaked yearly? I can't remember.
Yeah,
We review it every year and
we adopt it, and then we also have an amended every year that kind of catches up where we actually went with everything. So you kind of get 2 touches on that every year.
So usually you'll get the amended TIP late summer, early fall, and then the next TIP in fall.
Okay.
Barry's already got a calendar, I just haven't seen it. Any other questions we can answer for you?
So.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Ready, partner?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be back on time.
Say what?
Thank you.
Get my partner in crime up here with me.
That's right. Say we're back on time, so. Good thing, thanks Kyle.
Well, good morning, non-budget related. Give you guys a little break from that. We're gonna talk about the Crisis Relief and Sobering Center. We just ended, and I'll cover it in the schedule, we just ended in one phase and entered into a new one, so it was a prime time to come and give an update to the board. And go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Kind of the background on the project and the rationale behind it. All on the RCW 71 before 916, launching a design build project, progressive design build project. We estimated to be around 20,000 square foot. Would include a drive-in and public walk-up access. The extension of the services that already exist at the stabilization center. And then operated 23-hour services with up to 24 certified recliners. And then also, adding to the community a bit, the advantage of having substance abuse and sobering services available. First responder drop off, referrals from 911, and then walk up as well. And as I stated, next slide, please. Actually, 2 slides, Rebecca. There you go. Covering the
Can I pause
schedule.
you real quick? Sorry.
Sure.
just so I'm, making sure I'm up on the latest. Can you talk about how the services that you anticipate being provided there compare to what's currently offered at Stars?
Just coming
So
to-
just so I can understand that
Yeah, so
vision.
as the current stabilization stands, it's an inpatient facility. So there's 3 levels of care there. But the primary issue that we come against is, do they meet the level of need for an inpatient facility? And oftentimes they're either not stable enough or there's other issues. So it's gonna be a walk-in 24-hour response. Now, the difference with what we're running at Stars is it's a sobering and triage, which is the quickest way we can get a program up and running to meet the immediate need. But it is not a crisis relief center, which encompasses all behavioral health conditions and not just those that are withdrawing from substances.
Okay.
So it'll encompass that component within the facility. But the primary overall is kind of a catch-all for any condition, regardless of the diagnosis, which is going to be different. They also have to take more complex medical cases, meaning individuals that may have, because right now they turn them away if they've got skin lesions or other things. They have to be able to do an assessment and then immediately bring them in. So greater access to overall, and we'll be able to, and this is the real kicking point, bill Medicaid where we can't currently do that with Star Sobering.
So the sobering facility is not billing Medicaid, but there's crisis dollars that how's the operation funded? of
So
Stars?
Star Sobering is entirely funded right now through our SAVG or federal block grant dollars and opioid settlement funds for operation, but we're able to pair those together. In addition, we pay them for the withdrawal management services out of our GSF or state dollars. So there's usually an average of 8 to 10 hours that they stay in the sobering center. We pay for that time and then moved upstairs, and the Medicaid covers the inpatient component.
So then for this facility, there'll be more mental health conditions that are able to be captured in that crisis umbrella and then a higher level of medical care as well.
To an extent, but yes,
Yes.
it'll be a catch-all for all symptomology and behavior. And we'll now be able to bill Medicaid for those once those contracts are in place. Yeah. So more sustainable funding long-term. Yeah.
Thanks.
Good, okay. Moving on to the schedule.
As I just mentioned earlier, we just got done with the validation phase. We're moving into the phase one, which includes the design and schematic design that Justin's gonna talk about a little bit more here in a minute. And then you can see that groundbreaking, hopefully Q1 of 2026, which is an exciting time. So that's what we're looking forward to. Next slide, 2 slides, please. And just in a way of orientation, you can see where it's gonna land. If you look to the left-hand side, that's STA. And then you can see the little L building that's on the corner there. And then the stabilization center is that in the square box. And then it'll be right next door to it, will be the Crisis Relief and Sobering Center. And as we're talking about the site, next slide, please. We do need to procure it from the county road fund. It was appraised at $1.3 million. The funds are proposed to come out of the 159 mental health sales tax fund. And then we have a draft resolution prepared to go, ready to go for the next legislative session. Next slide, please.
So just a second. So what's
Back it
the,
up.
what are we asking for legislative session?
Pardon me?
So the last bullet, the draft resolution is prepared and ready for the next, this
So,
legislative session.
to procure the
I'm
land.
sorry, I was thinking asking the state for more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, super. Going on to the budget, you can look at the overall project budget lines there, and it's all broken out by bar chart. And then the overall total budget is, bolded in the bottom. And then we've also identified on here for your, conversations with your constituents, the funding streams, again, opioid settlement dollars, sales tax, state grant funds, and then a pending federal grant fund that we're still waiting to get information on. So that's what if all those were to come to fruition, that's what we'd be looking at in the bolded as far as project overall funds. So as I stated earlier, we're in the design and I'm sorry.
So Commissioner, just kind of wind the clock back when we were conceptually high level thinking about what it might cost. We had talked about a potential $15 million, wouldn't know until Mike and team were able to get a firm identified for our progressive design work, get the validation phase done to inform on more of the details. At the time, Commissioners, your early seed investment was the opioid dollars of $5 million. And you also earmarked $10 million of our mental health sales tax reserves to get to our 15. Since that time, we've known through work that Jeff and John Colton have done. We're trying to get some congressionally directed spending from the federal government of $3 million. It's still pending today. We did learn in the last legislative session the state did commit $3 million. So that's kind of where those funding sources are that Mike identified in here. Obviously don't need the entire potentially 21 million now that we have some other state and possible federal grants coming in. But having a budget, 15 million, we're pretty close to that number for doing a really high level estimate, and 15.7 looks to be it. That's all inclusive. That's all of our construction, all of our owner's rep, land acquisition, all of our FF&E, all of our soft costs for design, site, geotech, permitting, and then a contingency in there as well. So feel pretty good about that budget right now.
As I stated earlier, we're in the design and schematic phase, and this is where I'm going to turn it over to Justin to talk about the interconnectivity with stabilization facility, and then just having Justin there to inform on the operational side and infrastructure, just uber important, along with Pioneer, which is our selected operator for it. So go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, no, this has been really exciting little endeavor. Focus really when we're looking at the use of the building was not only maximizing the space, We have to provide everything we want on that site, trying to future-proof. Is there expansion that we want to look at? We're getting the best bang economically for our buck. So if we want to co-locate medical services there, can we plan for that to also occur? And then also to build for the full 24, but we're still planning only for the 16, because right now that's a more sustainable model based on what we know. But if it ends up being, there's more money in the future. So a lot of the design concepts are looking at future-proofing and then integration into the existing stabilization center. So you'll see there's a greater visual appeal from a curb, which actually identifies the work that's being done there. It also allows for a public-facing aspect. So now, instead of seeing Pioneer and Plaster on the side of a brick building, you'll see an entrance, a walk-in, and a community lobby for individuals. So a lot went into saying, we want the public to be aware of the services we're providing. And not only that, this is a recovery center. So how do we incorporate that while also maintaining? So you'll see some of the designs flow right directly into the current stabilization center, again, maximizing the use. So in there, we also looked at saying it'll be the front and community facing portion of it. So no longer will people go through the stabilization center. They'll all come through Crisis Relief and Sobering Center as a single entry point, either through law enforcement, emergency response or community referral, or hospital referral, or through the walk-in entrance for community members and or after hours walk-in. So that'll all be done there. And then programming will then look at ensuring that it's all going to be administratively done within that section. And then they'll go to the respective sections, either in the inpatient for the 3 stabilization, withdrawal management or residential, or into the crisis relief. Based on the data, we believe that most individuals will go into relief center for stabilization and then transition into inpatient. That's what we're seeing primarily in the community. So the design was incorporating what does that flow look like if you have 4 people coming in, and ensuring that there's process and programming to respond without increasing the operational costs, which I've been a little bit of a hawk on. Something Mike told me to back up on some cases. Why? Because operational is the second component we're trying to build. Not just build the building, but can we maintain the functional funding for it as we look to the future? And that has been incorporated as simultaneously as we work on this project. So Pioneer has joined us now. The initial conversations to design based on Mike's and I's conceptualization of it. And then their expertise comes in to say, no, it'd be more strategically located here based on our experience of what comes in and flow. So it's been helpful, but not significantly changing our existing building design. And then it also maximizes the lot space so that the county can continue utilizing additional space without impacting services at the relief center, and that there are future potential uses for the county without having to make significant changes. So the east lot, as well as the L-shaped building, will not be touched. They'll still be secured. And there will be entrance and use for the building on that side, but it won't be a primary. Again, maximizing the county's future potential use of that site while ensuring services continue. In the midst of this, we recognize too, the building will take up a lot of the front-facing aspect of the stabilization center. So we also have contingency plans to continue operations so that there'll be no disruption to the services being provided to individuals or access to the facility. Won't look the same, and law enforcement might not have a beautiful little bay to come into, but they will have an area where they'll have access, as well as continued use of a secure area. Again, it's all voluntary, but we know what it's like to have law enforcement come in, be able to have a secure area where they can offload and transition individuals, and then also leave the facility. So a lot of work's been going into that. And then just into what does the process and flow look like so that again, economically speaking, we can reduce costs for unnecessary staffing, while also ensuring that there is an immediate transition into services without a delay. One of the challenges that they're currently finding is administration is set in one area, but it's not big enough to be able to respond. And that was more of a need. So we're building that out. We looked at lessons learned in the current stabilization, and we're improving on it. There are minor changes that need to occur within the current stabilization center. So all of the money into renovation will be in the new building. That does lead to future potential work that needs to be done in the stabilization, because they're going to be vacating a lot of space, and that space could be altered or utilized for other need. which again, gives us more opportunity as we look towards future proofing the site. Is there something else we want to co-locate on the building? So this not only ensures existing services, but gives us a lot of maneuverability in the future if we want to pivot, add, change, or alter.
And then just a side note from that, the vacated sign shop, the L building is gonna be used as a construction office during construction. And so that'll have to change it a little bit on the gate side. I do want to introduce Nate, who's on, if you want. He was a project manager for our owner's rep. Have him introduced.
Hello, everyone. Nate Brazil with Turner Townsend. So been helping Mike and the rest of the team here with the progressive design build. Somewhat of my background is roughly 20 years in commercial construction and progressive design build. As far as the delivery is, I feel the probably most advantageous delivery for this project. So, happy to answer any questions I can.
Well, thank you. Nice to meet you and welcome to the team.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great.
Good.
We have had some great conversation. I think the other part that's important as part of this that is occurring concurrently is conversations and work with community partners as we look towards what funding and partnerships. Part of this project requires that we work with regional hospitals to ensure that there is some agreement trying to reduce some of the ER utilization so that unnecessary ones come to the facility. Having spent a lot of time in the ER here recently, I can tell you that is needed for behavioral health to be and have a site location where unnecessary services that could be resolved at lower level care can be provided here. So that's one area where I think we are working very closely with them. And I think the commissioners have joined us in this conversation and the teams that are having those more needed on that end. We're also working with local municipalities. As the board is aware, the city of Spokane Valley is still working on giving us some of their opioid dollars to support this project. And of course, the city of Spokane has discussed desire to transition that support in the future as we look towards what does the partnership with STARS look like if we are taking on a building, and how is the money going to be spent? So we regionally come together to address the funding needs, especially for those areas we know currently with loss of funding, potentially with Medicaid as well as with state in the current position it's at, really coming together with those sources. So concurrently that work is happening, and we're also working with the state to lock in operational funding. So a lot of capital work with Jeff and the team in terms of securing that. But I'm also strategically looking at operational funding. With the passing of 1813, that service is now included, and we have a little more say in it. But I do think startup funds for operations needs to occur within the state as well. So we'll be working on that in the next live session to talk about. They called out 3 counties and 3 facilities. Spokane was not included. We need to be included on that conversation. We'll be opening one of those in Eastern Washington. And then also with Department of Health, co-locating those services in a facility is locking down to ensure that there's no disruption or surprises. It's a brand new facility and we'll be one of the first ones coming online. We don't want changes last minute to hamper our work, especially since we're being strategic in adding the sobering component, which other facilities have not. And ensuring that that is also not a hurdle is ongoing work with Pioneer. So a lot of work on the capital project and infrastructure, but also on the operations and work so that when this opens, we will hopefully not have any of these issues of saying delay for 6 months while we have a review or funding.
Get out in front of that.
So when you say that they called out 3 sites, what does that mean? Who was that?
If I remember correctly, 3 other facilities in Pierce County, North Sound, and in King County were called for specific funding for their relief centers, or it's a joint relief and other treatment service, urgent care facilities.
Is that the legislature directed or okay?
Yes.
So do you, as you work to kind of flesh out and lock down the operational funding model, what role does the board need to play in terms of advocating or helping make that happen? Because we want it to be solid.
Great question. I know this is something Commissioner Cooney's been working with a representative on the west side to make them aware because they're championing this and getting that funding. So this year was a big win for us to get 1813 passed. So big thank you to the board for making that happen. Commissioner Cooney for testifying on that. Now they're looking at adding more rules because although it carved that out, they didn't add money to it. So now it's needs defined on what does that look like. So this next ledge session where I'll be coming in the board and to Jeff saying, hey, this is an area we need to be a big advocate for because as they look to ensure funding is made available specifically for that service, this is where the board can come in and say, and Eastern Washington this is a critical and vital resource, include in any plan, include
Operational dollars.
yes.
Okay.
In the planning as you look forward.
Part of the problem that's happened is like in Linwood, there was a facility that opened that they couldn't.
Right.
Staff, right, you know, there wasn't a provider that wanted to take it on.
So we have the provider.
So we have a provider and
Money's
all of
there.
that. So I'm hoping to get that legislator to come over to this side of the state to see, because I mean, they just, as you know, they're a west side legislator. They're not thinking about what's happening on the east side. And so we're just trying to provide that information to help them see that we're doing things. I mean, because Skagit County, they're gonna be opening theirs soon, and they came over and looked at ours a couple of years ago. And so theirs was based off of what we've done. Spokane County is leading the way in this. And we're doing it better than anyone else, so we're super excited that people are seeing us, but it's still not on a lot of the legislators. We need our legislators here to be talking to other legislators about what we're doing and how we're doing it here. And so I'm hoping to get Representative Davis to come over and take a look at what we're doing, see it.
Well, I'm sure we'll come back to it, but we made the big push for the 3 million, got that. So that reflects some understanding and hopefully whatever the ask is around the operational piece can be a top priority for the next session.
And we're formulating it right now with our counterparts. WASIC is heavily involved in ensuring that these resources are included, and it's kind of partnering with them. As you know, there are louder voices on that side, and those facilities already exist, so they were rapidly trying to find money to make them viable. And one of the unique things that Spokane has, which is also putting us in a more challenging position, is we thought about that funding in advance, so we have a lot of local funding and work on it, so they don't see us as critical as the other facilities because of the preemptive work that we've done. But now that we have made this aware last year, and we've heard rumblings that this year they're going to bring forward more bills to identify this gap in service coverage. That's where we'll be coming forward to as we formulate the response in partnership with the other facilities as we look to see what their ask is. Obviously, it's not going to be full funding from the state, but I do think we need to identify, how that looks so we're not left out of the conversation.
I think one important aspect I just add from the communication side of things. And Commissioner, you just raised it about awareness at the legislature. It's just awareness in the community that Spokane County has this project. I've heard from a couple of you intermittently and from others that are surprised because I think other community leaders have identified this as a need and see it as a big gap, this particular piece of walk-in access. And then when we tell them, well, we have that project underway, it's like, oh, how come I didn't know about that? And that's in spite of or despite having multiple rounds of media on the STARS investment, which we've been talking about long-term versus short-term. So I think it would be helpful. Scott and I talked about developing just some information on the web, on our website. Like we already have for the existing stabilization center a page about that initiative, but another page with a lot of this information up there. And I think it's really helpful when you're talking with people in the community about this. It just emphasize the impact that it's going to have and try to help them see the forest for the trees, because there's a bigger picture here than the dollars and the cents and the nuts and the bolts of this. What it's going to do for diversion, for ERs, what it's going to help law enforcement do, what's going to help do for our downtown community, where we're seeing a lot of these issues crop up, but now all across the county, this will be accessible.
And just for citizens, I'd say, for citizens that have a family member in crisis that don't know what to do.
As a resource. Right, and with that impact, I think we have to communicate the benefit, not the features of the project necessarily, which are interesting, square footage, entrances here and there, but what's the ultimate community benefit? Is that people who are in crisis can get help, or somebody that has a family member in crisis doesn't know where to turn, this will be available. So we've talked about a couple of things like a coming soon sign on the property. I mean, one really difficult things with a project and a concept is making it real. Where they're gonna go, what's it gonna look like, they have all these nice renderings. But we've talked about including this in the state of the county, the Cherry State of the County address. And we have some other items in there, Stars, Maddie's Place. But thinking about how to make it real for people when there's not a brick and mortar you can walk into. So I think that's another piece of the communication challenge, is it's just, you know, when we are to the stage of having a groundbreaking, great, but in the meantime, is there an open house that can be done with folks from the medical system, from healthcare, with law enforcement, with fire, with some of the nonprofits in town that provide these services, just to bring them along. I know this is probably happening at your advisory boards and your project team meetings, but try to get that internal information organized in a way that it can start sinking in and saturating out there. So anyways, just a few ideas, but a web page, a revised fact sheet that's not advocacy based, but it's more just like, here's this project and why we're doing it and why it matters to you.
One thing I was gonna bring up too, that Justin and I have been talking back and forth. You got the CRC, you got the stabilization, there's not really a name for it. And for the board's consideration, if you want to come up with a name, you had a good one, what was that?
Spokane County Regional Diversion and Recovery Center.
I mean, something that we can tie it all in together with instead of, you know, all these acronyms, so.
So it's the idea being, once it's complete, it is one facility being utilized, and having one name would be appropriate, and it also allows us to be able to message that better, especially when we have renderings.
Yeah, Pat's, yeah.
I would think about, and this is just blue sky, something more about like harbor or lighthouse or guide or path. Something that communicates, navigating people, because that's still pretty jargon. And we can work on some concepts, but
And, you know,
we don't need another acronym.
Justin never speaks in jargon.
I know, that's working on it.
can also be dedicated to an individual or some, I mean, you know,
Yeah, name.
a name or something of that nature, just throwing it out to the board, so. Exciting, anything else? I mean, it's nice.
Like you said, I think that public facing story is really important. We've been talking a lot about sobering and triage, which is good, and that's the immediate, it's kind of the next big thing. So I think it's a really good time to be putting some plans in place around that, getting that out there in public.
There was a project in town called like The Way Out.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's kind of like a rescue way out type name around it, might help people. I mean, sobering, yes, people say detox, sobering, withdrawal. But it's really that ultimate last step that you're helping people get back on their feet, so.
And just so you know, we're already brainstorming on the other piece of the property.
Yes.
Who would we like to see on?
And I like Patrick's idea about doing some sort of, I mean, the groundbreaking, if you did something, it's gonna be like in January, right? Pretty darn cold. So we had talked about maybe there's a kind of a planting of the sign with the visuals, maybe in the October timeframe where it's not cold yet. We're not necessarily doing the groundbreak. We're not gonna start construction right away, but it's another chance to publicly talk about what's to come, what's gonna look like now that we have some more firmness around construction timeline and budget and rendering, so the commissioners get another chance to share with the community what we're doing. Just, you know, sometimes people don't pay attention until it's right in front of them. And even though you all talked about a lot of media communication on this, just yet another opportunity to share. So it's just an idea that we were kicking around.
I think one aspect on the funding that and the finances that is important, and if I'm understanding this right, the county's made the commitment to this project. It is happening. This funding is going to be helpful, but when we communicate it as uncertain or waiting for this, waiting for that, media, the public here, well, maybe this will happen, maybe it won't. So to the extent that it is firm and is going forward, I think that will help make the concept a little bit more real, even if the operational funding and other things are still, there's some question marks. It's like talking about projections. It just sounds like a big maybe, you know, like maybe this is gonna happen.
I think the most important thing that we can point to then is the stabilization center. This is the next step in our commitment to folks that are in crisis. Look what we did with the stabilization center, or, you know, this is a continuation of our work that we showed with the stabilization center. I mean, when I talk to folks about this concept, I always tie it back to the stabilization center. It's right on the same campus. It's right next door. It's a continuation of our work we started with the stabilization center. So I think keep tying it back to that shows we've made progress. Look at the stabilization center. This is the next phase. I mean, just so connecting it back to that, I think shows sort of we've done this, you know, or very similar things to this. You know, we're an organization, we're an entity that can deliver on these types of projects. So I think that's important. Keep tying it back to that.
And-
Because people can visualize that, people taking tours of that. It's like, this is the next stage.
And what is happening in STARS is the interim for us, that, you know, we've helped get them up and going and get the funding and made sure that we do have now, because that's the other thing, people are like, well, what are you gonna do now? We don't need it, you know, we need it now. And so this is where we can show, yes, we've done the stabilization center, it is successful. We've got STARS up and running to get that immediate need into the community, but then we're gonna have this, you know, in addition, you know, and transition to that, or, you know, but it's just gonna continue to improve. We're working hard at Spokane County, our community service department, to continue to help the people in our community, all of our, you know, the entire county.
I did have one question. I mean, I know these are renderings of the building and they're probably likely to change. Did this footprint with your schematics here, I mean, is that enough space? I mean, cause I'll just, as I look at sort of that, I guess that would be the northeast corner, having that big, huge, I mean, that's a lot of sidewalk. Would it be better to build out almost like the stabilization center, build out closer to the sidewalk to create more indoor square footage if the time came where you need to expand, rather than doing an addition to the building, plan ahead and sort of build it out to the sidewalk more to create more usable space today? So we aren't faced with 10 or 15 years down the road being like, oh dang, maybe we shouldn't have had this gorgeous entryway, because more valuable is actually indoor usable space. I don't know.
That's also the selling point for the drive-in. So that's kind of why it sticks on me so much, sorry.
And there's other considerations on that area as well.
I mean, right out on this court, well, maybe not even back that, but that whole corner. Okay.
Yeah, it just so, yeah, you're right.
So
I was just,
Still
Yeah.
you know, it looks nice from the outside, but if you need square footage.
there's some structural considerations having to take into account. So Nate, you can share on this, but there's ADA compliance requirements that we had to incorporate. And Nate.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the limitations that we have are still meeting the ADA access to it. So with basically the slope of the existing grade from the CSU, the property actually drops down roughly 4 or 5 feet, and then on the, I think it is Boone Avenue, that wall is roughly 7 feet-ish off the Boone Street grade, so roughly on that northeast corner, or excuse me, northwest corner on that one. So trying to come up with still a pathway for any ADA accessibility. Unfortunately, is, you know, kind of that back and forth of sidewalk that you see there that does take up some space. So it was definitely considered into the design, and you know, I guess maybe I want to kind of iterate too. This is by no means final design, as this is kind of a clay that we're working with, trying to mold it to the best fit for the property, best fit for the program. So.
Thank you. I'm just a second, Kyle, I had a
I
comment.
was just gonna add on to what Nate said with that elevation change coming right up there off of Boone Avenue to try to take the whole site down. We'd be spending millions in earthwork that aren't going into the building.
And it'll make more sense if you actually physically stood on that corner of Boone and tapped What's the road there?
Cedar?
Cedar. If you stood there, you'd see what the teams are talking about as far as how high the grade sits today. So trying to incorporate that in with existing grade. Yep, would it be better if it was flat, we could tuck it up to the corner more? Yep, but being able to kind of feather it back in, it's makes sense if you're visually seeing what it looks like current conditions.
Yeah,
Just
one of
gonna,
the large challenges that we were kind of facing again is on the interior side of the building to have a kind of at grade same plane connection from the CSU to the potentially whatever the name is going to be on this, but the crisis center on this side. That way we're not we're limiting any stairs or steps or ramps internally into the building as well. So we again probably saving space on the inside by not having to do a bunch of ADA excessive ramps and stairs inside.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna add real quick to Commissioner Kearns's point. This came up at BOMA when you gave your mini state of the county last year with the sheriff there. Is this, I mean, we went in there presenting thinking maybe there would be some critical feedback just about putting the service where it's at, et cetera. And so we're just there to communicate project timeline funding. And the first question was, is this going to be big enough? Do you need, I mean, there's a perception that the need is so great in the community that is 24, should it be 48? I mean, could you, gives you a size of the magnitude that the community is perceiving, especially downtown business managers or owners and managers. But to the other point, Commissioner Kearns raised, I think talking about this with the federal delegation, Jeff and I did some wordsmithing, was about expansion of the stabilization center. So an earlier iteration of this had it just, this is the next step 2.0 or 3.0 and what we're doing with the stabilization center. People can understand expanding something that's already successful and working. So that might be another frame to continue talking about it, even if it's in the advocacy space. This is expanding something we already have. This isn't brand new, empty lot, greenfield building. It's expanding.
And enhancing.
Yeah, providing, service level.
And to that point, we've gotten a lot of those questions too, is it big enough? We did a lessons learned from various facilities across the state. And really the key aspect is the killer for most of these facilities is the operational cost associated with that liability. Scaling up too big and at any given point you drop below the 80% census, it is no longer viable. So we did it so that if it dropped below that, we may be exceeding capacity, but at least this facility would be sustainable. That the funding that we know we can provide, at least put in place, can ensure this facility lasts longer than 5 years. Now, we did allow for the scaling up to 24, which will be 32, but we started at the 16 and 8, 16 chairs, 8 sobering beds, with the scaling up to 24 chairs and 8 sobering beds with 32. That exists, plus up to 42 in the inpatient. So really, there is a large volume that we could utilize, and I do think it will be. That's why STARS is also there too. That partnership will continue to exist to offset some of the need.
In the design itself, we're trying to modify the interior so it can be supervised better by the staff that are existing already. So we're gonna buy some economy of scale for that as well.
The area back by the garage, is that anticipated to be a parking? What is that?
It is going to be a county designated space that has not yet been determined unless the board decides. So it'll be secure.
Okay.
It'll have access for any county personnel that need to utilize the L-shaped building for whatever purpose the board decides. It'll also be the service delivery section and garbage pickup for the facility. As for the board's determination on that lot and usage, that's still forthcoming.
So in theory, though, if you felt like it was big enough, could you push it that way more in terms of the size towards the whatever street that is there? Anyway, I don't want to get too into it. I was just I think Commissioner Kearns raised a good question. I know there's a lot of competing factors to figure out what's that sweet spot, right? I do like having a kind of recognizable entrance for it. I think that's a good strength of the concept that you've got, which is a weakness of the current crisis stabilization center, in my opinion. that public visibility piece would be good to have. What's the space in the middle?
Outdoor space.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was gonna ask, because last time I
Yeah.
toured, someone from, I think, one of the stone companies asked them like, what's the number one thing that you would want? And outdoor space was one of the answers, so that's good to hear.
6x12 currently,
Yeah.
we're expanding it almost fourfold. Yeah,
Okay.
and it'll be an indoor track for individuals to walk around and just engage. So, you know, we're trying, so the good news is by adding the things that we are in this one, talking about space, we're actually freeing up space in the current stabilization center. So again, there is ability to maximize space within existing ones, which is why we try to be as economical as possible. Don't build too big if there's unused space that will currently be vacated that we could utilize to a greater efficiency. And right now, the bay that's currently being used will be completely empty. It's unused space that we can then augment. We'll call that phase, whatever we're on now, 3.1. And by utilizing or expanding that out, we could actually, again, maximize that to a greater potential as well.
So my one comment would be with knowing the state of the county is less than 6 weeks away. Oh my God. You know, trying to come up with whatever we do think we want that name to be, because if we're gonna be, because we will be talking about this at the state of the county, and I think the more we can be consistent going forward, because we have had, you know, whether we call it the stabilization center to the crisis relief serving center. I mean, we've had a lot of different iterations of names. And I think the sooner we can really kind of come to what we think that would be before the state of the county, because it'll be pretty easy just to put it in, that would be great. Because I think then it gives us all the same verbiage to use going forward. So there you go. 6 weeks.
Well, I'm trying to explain it to the public.
I've come up with a lot of
And
names.
the board.
Yeah.
Yes, and
But so.
and
so
Pat
we gotta
started
really-
figuring out most of those, so we'll come up with something that. Yes, it's not a difficult thing to come up with names on Justin's side, but.
No,
easily
but the board
share.
has to approve
Yes.
what that is, and so I think it's gonna be important that I don't wanna go communicate crisis relief and serving center to the community, and then we decide we're gonna change it thereafter, especially as Cal was talking about how important it is on this, you know, communication side to show that we're committed, it's happening, it's all of that, you know, this is just an expansion of it, but I think, if you guys talk about names, we do probably want to nail that down.
Yeah.
Is it ironclad? You know, we could change it in the future, but if we could really come up with what we think it could be, that would be great.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Anything else? If we, okay,
No.
thank you.
So.
Okay, is there anything else? Because I do know we're going to continue.
Thanks, Tom.
Nothing from me.
Two miscellaneous items, I can mention or brief on them tomorrow, but we are preparing a press release for the award for NACO, for Justin's group. And we have a release draft prepared and we'll get you for approval, for the ILA on Maddie's Place that will be on tomorrow's agenda. Just talking about the city joining the county and the Maddie's Place funding. So.
I don't know whether back.
Oh,
With a bunch of. You brought paper and pen.
Quickly, if you have a moment, go over the 1 o'clock today, just to make sure we have as you guys would like.
Yeah, we're kind of gonna happen. So what?
Well, we have time to make adjustments, so.
Okay.
It's kind of the run of the show.
Okay.
After chat with these, we get out there as needed to. Mr. Scott. Y'all have a personalized one. You watch, I was halfway writing some notes on yours. So you'll see. So the way we have it, you have the staple packet, which is the entire presentation. And I gave each of you a notes page. In our mind, we're gonna have each of you talk to one of the slides. So just quickly, we went with a stormy seas theme. Because we thought it was fitting. We'd start with Commissioner Cuny. Just hitting the 5-year projection slide that everybody's seen. And we're talking about, I'll just be showing that again about the year. The numbers that you've all heard. Welcoming comments, of course. But you'll see your comments as we were thinking them, Commissioner Cuny. Let us know if you like any changes. And then, so Commissioner Cuny would have the opening slide as well as the slide titled Big Picture Numbers, Tough Choices Ahead. Then our thought was on the expense side, we'll flip to Commissioner Kearns. Just talking about levels of service. We already just talked this morning with DDM, talking about mandated services versus nice to haves. And then talking about starting early versus waiting to the end of the year. And then we have examples of attrition that's already happened within the OCC departments. And then the last one is the revenue slide.
Jeff, as this attrition has already started, who do we want to sort of explain each of those? I mean, I can touch on a few. I don't know
we need
these
to
departments.
talk through them
We
all.
want someone to
But
give
the ones that are,
examples.
the ones that have department names have lost all already attrited at one position.
Okay.
Except for the two that say 2 positions.
Yeah, okay,
So these, I don't think we need to talk through the stories in my mind.
okay.
It's just showcasing across these 7 departments that report up to the VOCC. There's 9 people used to work here. When they left service, we did not replace it.
Okay.
And there were about 70 additional vacant positions that were removed. For the most part, those were not funded, but it does change the conversation going forward. As far as what's funded, what's not funded. So we removed roughly 79 positions. So I don't think we need to talk to you specifically. If you'd like us to,
If there-
myself or Scott.
If there are questions, you can just kick them to us, we can
Okay.
answer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know the story on some of these, but not all. of
Yes,
these.
got it.
So, okay.
And then on the revenue side, we thought Commissioner Jordan could talk through the reminding.
I get voluntold out of town.
First time seeing, so.
Reminding people that like the property tax can only be 1%. We'll have already talked through the reality of 7% increases with inflation and such. It does show what our bank capacity is, which is smaller than the budget office expected, so I assume maybe smaller than you guys expect also. We have double confirmed that. The road levy shift, we have the note in there on the road shift, just to talk through how it's historically been used only for capital. And usually a significant portion for road maintenance or other public works related stuff. It can be used for anything that the general fund can be used for. Historically, that's where it's been.
So the road shift takes banked capacity from the road fund,
Oh, yeah,
and it moves it over to general.
Yes.
right.
And then do you have like how many times in the last 10 or 15 years it's been utilized?
We will have that.
By
Okay, all right. Okay,
And then I'd say roughly it's about 50% of the time it's been taken, but we will do less.
And this last one, that's only for public safety.
That one's only for criminal justice.
Need to be clear.
Just created, so on his notes, only for criminal justice, just created in 25 legislative session. We talked through the strings that are attached, there's this compliance between state and federal law.
I think I wanna have that on the slide. Because otherwise it seems,
There's no guarantee we qualify to even adopt it if we want
We
it.
have that all in his speaking.
right now, I would have it
We-
on the slide, because what I don't want is someone to take a photo of the slide. And then it seems like it's
So
confusing.
do we qualify?
What, I would just say there's for criminal justice. Only,
No certainty that we qualify.
and not certain that we qualify.
We do have the challenges between state and federal inconsistency right now.
Yeah, I mean, that can be discussed, but it's like it needs to be just identified that this is
Criminal justice. also.
That's good. Yep.
criminal justice only. And we're not sure that we qualify at this point in time.
So those
If somebody only sees this slide as is, they're like, oh, look,
16
it's
million.
fixed.
The commissioners decided not to take $16 million. Yeah, when they could, so that would fix all of our benefits, that they'll,
They're quickly mathematically.
Yep.
So that's,
On the road shift, it said my notes say a portion being used on this historically only used for capital projects so is that true? That's just capital, not operating.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
capital versus operating, since it's a one-time, you can do it every year. But since it is a one-time action each year, historically, the board has not.
Half has gone back to roads. the
Half has
other
gone
half
back to
has gone-
roads, some sort of M and O.
When I've approved it.
It's like I could do two or three things. I don't know, since I've been reading, I know, since I've been commissioner. I was adamant that I would only approve it if 50% went back to roads, because that's one of our major complaints we get. From citizens is road fund stuff,
And it's hard to get road maintenance.
and it's hard to get, yeah.
Very much.
And then when it says and other public works related activities, what would that have been historically? The other.
The building you'll be standing in.
The building, yeah, okay.
That's
That's what I thought. Okay. But historically has not been used as an operating source of revenue.
And then the other was for one time cap.
And should somebody bring up our unreserved fund balance, we will have the sheet of paper that we went over here a few weeks ago, just kind of ticking off the ideas that have been put against it already and how it generally, for the most part, is kind of spent in minds. Just final decisions have been made and the timing of when you want to do it. You can certainly change what you want to do with it. That's your prerogative. But it's not like we have $35 million to do it. All it's going to be up to. You know, we have 15 million worth of IT in it. Other things there. We were going to include that on here, but just FYI, we will have it. We thought that could be another question. Anything else you would like fixed in the next few months or changed aside from what we have? Changed.
Not yet.
Tess is doing stuff real time here.
What's the current projected deficit again? Is that in here?
It's on the graph, about 20 million.
Still 20.5. Okay, got it.
And just by way of reminder, our undesignated fund balance is really more at 30 now, because you, as a board, did approve the 4 million for the risk fund, which will save each department's budget, 'cause won't be coming out of those budgets anymore in 26. The fund balance, so you have solved on that piece for the different departments, but it has reduced our fund balance down to more of a 30-ish. Versus
I think it's important, or I would just throw out an idea for Commissioner Jordan, when we get to your slide, you know. Yes, these opportunities are here, but tying it back to that original slide showing, okay, it fixes it for 1 year. But where are we next year? Where are we the year? I mean, so it truly would be like a one-time fix.
Just pick us for next year.
And so,
Maybe
but
right back to
not
square
beyond
one.
that, yes, so I think, you know, going back to that 5-year projection slide, I think is important.
Then, once we get to what we call the question page. We script this for the CEO to hit. You know, just consumer spending, possible recessions, interest rate volatility. Some of the challenges, reminded the board has to solve and balance all the different departments against each other. The people in the room, for the most part, can focus just on their department, just that different thing. And then we do have 3 groups who are ready to speak to decisions they have made. It can be called on to spur conversation if needed, which includes Kevin in IT, Clerk Fitzgerald, and Sparker with Law Justice. And so each of them, conversation wanes and we need to kind of kickstart it. They're all ready to share what they have done or what they are looking at doing, just to kind of get discussion rolling. And I haven't talked to you yet.
You haven't talked to me yet, Jeff. Yeah.
But we've talked it enough. I know you can handle it. We did talk with both Kevin and last week.
Kevin is here, not Sean.
His surgery got pushed back. He was going into knee surgery. Yes.
I was just gonna, add, and we can talk offline if this is too much detail. But, you know, the budget letter communicated a projected deficit, and I know that's been important, but we're now into 7 months of the year. And that projection is looking pretty solid, I mean, in terms of tracking. There have been other updates given to the board just that I've picked up on. Maybe the number's tracking better than it is. And so whether it's the high bar, medium bar, or low bar, we're gonna hit. I think this isn't, you know, helping communicate, this isn't just an exercise. This is real world, that target in there is, that's your assigned budget, or however you say it, allocated budget. It's not optional for you to hit your target. You know, trying to communicate a little bit more certainty as the year's going on, and I think just the human nature is, oh, things will get better, revenues will improve, the economy's not doing that bad, maybe it's, you know, maybe this won't be a problem. Just helping try and make it more concrete and real to people. I know, Matt, you had a point at one point with another department. It's just like, this is what it is, you have to manage within that number. And that seemed to, you know, that message seems to be received a lot different than target, projected, possible. Anyway, just thinking about how to communicate interpersonally, but also to the group, that this is the likely scenario.
We've talked one-on-one with departments. We've framed it as when you bring forward your 7% reduction. You have the top sections of stuff we can live with. We realize nobody likes any cuts, but we can deal with this next year. The next year things we really don't want to do, we don't think we should do. This is the service impact, but if we have to, this is where we go next. And then to highlight, if for some reason, like last year, there's a little bit of money left over, you guys can buy back a few things. I'll highlight what is the first thing you would want bought back in your department, if the funding's there to help, or start making those decisions, if there's any revenue to do that with. And that's a major if.
Well, and I think we've got to be clear though, because that didn't happen last year. I mean, it's like we talked about, we were gonna go back and look at capital and talk about capital. We didn't really finalize.
Talking operations on
Right,
this.
right now I know, but it's like everyone looks at it differently. It's differently. So I think that we have to be clear that as the board, as the administration, that we're going to go back, and that's a discussion for the board to have. And it is going to be set that we will do that. Because what I don't want is kind of what I felt happened last year, is we talked about, we were trying to hurry and we didn't finalize all the capital at that time. We said, we'll come back and talk about it. We never really did. So
We have, starting after Labor Day, we have every Monday booked.
no, I'm talking
So
about.
I'm just saying, there'll
this
be
is-
time
No, this
to
is
come
after the
to
fact.
do it as a budget cycle.
After the end game and
Yes, after we approve the budget, if we say we're gonna come back and look at
To
some.
make sure we do.
We do need to make sure we do it. So,
I remember last year, our discussion around the buying back was more operation. It wasn't the capital side.
Right,
And we did buy back certain positions, like I think the auditor, she had said, I can let these 4 positions go, but I'd like one of them back. And we had the funds to buy one back. I think we did that in a few different positions.
But on
So,
capital,
yeah.
there were comments made after the first of the year, there'd be some more discussion. I think that's the piece that.
that's
Commissioner Kearney's
what I'm just discussing.
Okay, I don't remember the.
The sheriff
saying
covers
we're
that
gonna do
was, but
Yeah,
Okay.
So I mean, I just want to be yeah, clear that we, that we're gonna go true on it. Okay, well, I guess, yeah, we don't have much time in between. So.
in the world.
Exactly.
So it's at 1324 North Walnut.
This actually does.
Or
over
my
two,
block.
two, also two.
His walk.
So then we are. Make sure I say this all right, that we are going to be continuing this meeting from this morning till 1 o'clock. Or as soon as possible thereafter, to be held at the new Spokane County Public Operation Building, large conference room at 1324 North Walnut Street. So we will be closing this session for now and then continuing it at 1 o'clock. So we'll take this.